In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order of March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting virtually. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the meeting, the public may access this call through video conferencing or telephone. Following the presentation by the petitioner and questions from the commission, members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. Please identify yourself with name and address for the record. You can also raise your hand from your phone by dialing *9 and use *6 to unmute. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of the commissioners, Delia, and the current petitioner. Once the commission has acted on an application, the petitioner is free to leave the meeting. Screen sharing will not be permitted unless the applicant chooses to share directly. Otherwise, Delia will share plans for the meeting. All votes will be taken by roll call vote. In the event of any technical difficulties, all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will automatically be continued to the September 22nd, 2021 NRC meeting. At this time, I would ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. Greg?
Greg Higgins.
Gary?
Gary Kleiman.
Nick?
Nick Pappas.
And Sarah.
Sarah Grimwood.
Thank you, guys. I don't believe we have any minutes this evening, so I guess we'll go right into the director's update.
Very good. Good evening, everyone. Sorry to be back on Zoom again, but here we are, and hopefully off it again back into hybrid. I would like to give the commission an update on the Monument Street culvert replacement project. I have some photos that I'm going to share with you as we are discussing this. And let me just see if I can get there as we're, okay, I'm gonna start with something else. So let's see, we have Ag Day that will be held September 11th. 16th Annual Agricultural Day that will be as usual on Main Street in downtown Concord from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Conservation coffees resume in September. And we are starting, we usually, as you know, have them on the first Tuesday of every month at 7:30 at 141 Kai's. They will be virtual. And for the month of September, it's going to be on the 14th, just because of Labor Day, the prior week. The library is conducting a climate preparation week during the week of 9/24 through 9/30. And Jane Gruber Chevalier, who is the new executive director for the Concord Land Conservation Trust, she and I are going to present a workshop on natives, replacing lawns with native plants, and talk also about invasive species.
Awesome.
Yeah. So if you want to sign up, they haven't yet put it together as far as putting it onto the calendar, but that should be coming up soon. And as soon as that is ready, I can send it to the commission if you want the link to,
Yes,
to
please.
that information. Very good.
Yeah, please send that.
Okay. And now let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, sorry, so one more person to admit here. 1 second. Okay. So the Monument Street culvert replacement project, that was the failed culvert. It's just a bunch of people jumping on right now. Okay, so this is the upstream side of the culvert with these two steel I-beams holding this was where the initial sheeting had gone in, where they thought the break in the culvert was that was causing the failure. They actually realized it was 6 feet back. So this is the road bed up here. It was getting closer and closer to the road. There were some concerns about that. That is what has caused the delays in the project. It was initially anticipated to be a 6-week project, where now it's anticipated to be another 3 weeks to completion. This is one of the upstream box culvert sections. They poured the collar today. It's under burlap. They're not concerned about the rain affecting the cure. So that's the upstream side. This is just this plastic here, goes up onto the road, and that was put in place just to make sure that there wasn't water that was going to get behind the sheeting. This is a not very good photograph. I'm gonna skip that one. This is the downstream side. This is the bypass that was in place and has been in place now for about 8 weeks. The 10-inch pump, the 6-inch pump. This will kick on presumably tonight. Still discharging to Sawmill Brook, and this, tarp that was put in place has continued to function very well. This is, let's see, some swamp mats that they put in to access the culvert reconstruction or replacement. This is the downstream side with the head wall. There's one section behind this. The wall will be, the slope will be rebuilt. So it's at the top of the head wall. And they're going to use some existing stone that they encountered on the upstream side to sort of reface the top of this as it goes up to grade to Monument Street. And that's just, I didn't take this picture. I didn't crawl. This is the hole, but this was the our engineer who's overseeing the project looking through. This has not been connected yet, but he took a photograph of this looking through from the upstream side to the downstream. So it is progressing. It's had some hiccups. The scope remains the same, but they just encountered more obstacles than they had anticipated, which is not surprising. But it should be done within the next 3 weeks, including the compensatory flood storage and wetland replication. And I think that's it. That's it for me.
Thanks, Delia. That's pretty good progress in fairly short order, and dealing with a lot of old structures out there. So thank you.
You bet.
All right. So we do have a couple of continuances. We do have of note. We have an application that was withdrawn under an NOI for Herd Check, 13 Garland Road, DEP file number 137-1565. And Delia, I don't believe that needs a vote. That's just a notice, if you will.
That is just an acknowledgement
Yeah.
that application was withdrawn without prejudice.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have two cases, one to be continued the 22nd, one to October 6th. Could I get a motion for those?
I make a motion to continue DEP file number 137-1558, 1597 Monument Street to our September 22nd meeting, and also to continue DEP file number 137-1568, 365 Commonwealth Ave to our October 6th meeting.
Second.
Thanks, Nick. And we'll take the vote. Nick,
aye,
Greg,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and Gary.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. All right, so the first continuous to be heard this evening, notice of intent, 209 Musterfield Road, DEP file 137-1567. And who will be talking for the applicant this evening?
I will. My name is Francis Alves. I work for Creative Land and Water Engineering. You guys are used to dealing with DeShank, but he's covering another meeting today, so I'm going to be taking point on this one. So he just wanted to inform everyone that it took us a while to sit back for the hearing because they were doing an alternative analysis to see if there was any other location on the site where the leaching field could be located. But it turns out that where it's proposed right now is the ideal location, and that construction has started on the house. They did the demo of the building and they started with the foundation work, but that's all work that's outside of the buffer. So no clearing and no work for the leaching field has started. So anything in the buffer is still untouched until everything's agreed upon. And DeShank did go back to the site and review all the trees to be cut along with the caliber and how many and what the species were. and he sent that over in his separate report. And so that's going to be a total of 7 trees that will be cut in the buffer zone, and potentially another 2, but we think those 2 might be saved because that's on the edge of the grading, and it's only going to receive between 4 to 10 or 12 inches of fill. So there's a big chance that those trees will be saved. And another 6 trees will be for sure saved altogether in the buffer zone. And for the mitigation, we're proposing another 10 trees, which is 2 green ashes, 4 black oaks, and 4 red oaks. But depending on the amount of trees that we can save after the grading is done, that we might reduce the number of black oaks and red oaks to be planted. And I think that's pretty much it on my side. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer what I can.
Thank you. I do note that staff had a note for tree protection detail. Has that been put on the plans?
The tree protection detail, no, I believe it has not.
Okay. All right. And I think there was also a request that pheno markers get put on the plan as well along the 25 no disturb zone.
Okay. Like physical markers on site,
Yes.
like a construction fence, or what was
No,
discussed?
these would be, I think, post-construction, these are,
Oh.
markers that get.
Oh,
that
okay.
Get put into the ground, right? That clearly delineate the 25-foot zone and have a specific wording on them on an annual mow in the time frame.
Okay, got it. Right. Okay.
There was also a
Certainly staff can
concern about
provide you with
the,
that. I'm
there
sorry,
was
Sarah.
also, there was also a concern about the ash trees because of emerald ash borer, and a request to switch them out for other native trees.
Switch the ashes out. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, so I'll make note of that for us to find an alternative for the ashes, the post-construction markers on the 20-foot line, and the tree
25 foot.
protection.
Yeah.
I'm
Delia,
pretty sure that Colleen had relayed that information to Deshang, so you probably already have that in an email somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure to update this plan hopefully by tomorrow and then get that out.
okay. Any other comments from the commissioners?
No.
Or is there, hearing none, is there any comments from the public in regard to this application? All right. So if you're okay continuing to the 9/22, so you'll get those plans in, and then I'm sure we can close an issue if you collect all those comments and put them on the plan appropriately.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next continuance we have is for NOI 309 Lindsay Pond Road, DEP file number 137-1573.
Good evening, Bruce Ringwald here for the applicant.
Good evening, Bruce.
So unfortunately, I was not present at your last meeting. I did review the video of the meeting. I've had conversations with Delia. Had conversations with Delia relative to that, and we have modified our plan from our last meeting. Proposal is to remove the entire, whoops, I can't run the thing. So Delia's got it. Delia, I guess we'll start with the hard surface of the patio. So remove the hard surface of the patio, which is predominantly within the 25-foot zone. Based on my understanding from the last meeting, There was some discussion about okay with the alignment of the back of the house and the deck to maintain the patio across there. So we had proposed to remove that. Consequently, subsequently, since that meeting, or since we submitted that proposal, this proposal that's before you right now on electronic review, not the plans that we submitted in, is dealing with the request of the new homeowners. And that was to add in 10 more feet, which is this area that Delia is now showing us, adjacent to the existing patio of the same material across in that area. Further, with things to try to remedy and restore the buffer zone, the proposal is now to remove the full length of the retaining wall. This was a CMU block retaining wall, which had a return on the far left side of the image and goes all the way across just above the erosion control line over to where there is an existing large Japanese, whoops, back up, right there, you go, thank you, where there's an existing large Japanese maple. Then the Japanese maple was there a long time ago, as you can see from photos that were submitted, and I have online if we need to take a look at it. It's a very large Japanese maple. There are currently 5 raised beds that are in the light gray area right there. And we've suggested that the 2 that are closest to the wetland area be removed and placed to the right of the existing ones, and to remove the split rail fence, which is kind of hidden right along the edge of the current location, if you would, Delia, down a little lower. Actually, right along, yeah, right along, up a little, at the edge, upper edge of there you go, right there, right along there. And that hooks up through and hooks around. So we're proposing to remove that and then reinstall it where it is as a dark line right below you, Delia, just a little bit. Yeah, right there, going across and then enclosing the garden area to keep wildlife out of the garden. That section of split rail fence from there down to the toe of slope where the erosion control is proposed. The area that's clouded with the wavy curve is the area of bark mulch. We propose to remove that bark mulch. That's over my left shoulder and my little Hollywood square symbol there. Remove that bark mulch or that wood chip and then regrade that slope. It's about a 5-to-1 regrading versus the 2-to-1 that it is now. The area of the slope where the retaining wall is over on the other side, right in there where Delia's moved her cursor to, we would regrade right up to within a couple feet of the patio, and we'd grade that down at a 3-to-1 and then greater than 3-to-1 as you get over to where Delia is matching up there. We've been able to pick up these points on either the left and the right of your screen here on the natural slope off into the woods in the area that's been undisturbed. And those are the areas that we're tying back into for grade. This entire area would use either, we had called out for a North American erosion mat that has about 1.5 years for decomposition time, and seeding this whole slope with a New England wildflower seed mix. Delia had recommended a Flexterra use as well. If it's determined equivalent to the turf reinforcement. I have not had a chance to do a lot of research on that mat, but either one of those would be fine for us for stabilizing the slope. It shouldn't need a lot of stabilization with a 3-to-1 to a 5-to-1 slope, because those slopes are, a 3-to-1 is a standard around every septic system that you see go in these days. That's a mound, and you're not having a lot of problem with that. Now, to help with that, those plantings and on the slope the area behind the house directly where the split rail fence is, and we moved that up. This area was a lawn that kind of tapered down in the slope. And what we're proposing here is with moving that fence up, we have 2 pheno bounds proposed, one at the corner of the garden and one at the corner of where the fence rounds out towards the front yard. And then that slope again would be seeded with that wildflower mix, and it would sit behind that slope. So it'd be a much gentler slope. On the other side here, the top of the split rail fence currently has a white picket fence across it. That fence we would propose to connect right behind the end of the split rail fence, behind the Japanese maple, and run that on an angle up the slope to several feet off the patio. Pardon me, till several feet off the patio, and run that across, all the way across the 25-foot, and then diagonaling up to the edge of the 50-foot zone right there, and then proposing 3 pheno bounds across that back area right behind the fence as well. On that slope over there, we've proposed 3 groupings of 5 different, 3 groupings of 5 plants each within each grouping to complement the wildflower seed mix in that area. And then in the woods, as we had proposed before, where there was some of the understory kind of raked and cleaned up, we proposed the planting in there. And those plants are a winterberry, a high bush blueberry up on the slope, and I can't remember what the third one is. It's on the second sheet, but Delia, maybe you can remember what that is. I had in there. It's
It's not swamp, is it? A high bush blueberry.
high bush blueberry.
Was it sweet pepper bush, the third?
Thank you. Sweet pepper bush was the third. I knew it was another backup. Thank you. So that is the proposal. This proposal has been reviewed with the new owners as well as with the applicant. They're in agreement on what's here. Again, that 10-foot addition was a piece added out into here. The other thing that wasn't addressed previously, on the mid slope behind the current split rail fence is one location, and then just down gradient of the retaining wall on the other side up near the wood, right about where she just had her back a little bit. Yeah, right about in there. There are 2 locations of Japanese knotweed that are out on site there. And we've proposed that, assuming that we can get an order of conditions issued shortly, we're right at the edge of the window for cutting and treating. Typically between July and mid-September are the better times to cut and treat that. Right now we're on the edge because, as you know, the knotweed goes into flowering now. So what we would propose would be to bag the plants as they stand live within trash bags, large trash bags. Cut the plants at the base. Take the bag material off and allow it to dry, and then those dried plant materials would propose to have burned. The stems, after 48 hours, we would brush them with an approved glyphosate herbicide, and when approved by DEP for use near wetlands. And then we would propose that that be redone as sprouts come up in the June time, late June, July of next year, again in the fall of next year for any sprouts, and continue this for 3 years as necessary. We're fortunate right now that it's just 2 small locations of this knotweed, and we hope to catch it from its spreading. I had proposed some language for that. Delia had in a written format to go on the plan. Delia has some red line changes to give me, and provided that she gives me those red line changes right away, I'll jump them right on the plan for you tomorrow. That's our presentation, and I turn it to you for questions.
Thank you, Bruce, and appreciate the quick work. We know that was, time sensitive in regard to a transaction. And did I hear the transaction did occur? So the new owners now own the house?
It is my understanding that the new owners have taken ownership of the house, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I do believe that, what was suggested at the last meeting was followed, in terms of, lining up with the existing house and getting the beds out of the 25. And frankly, given the extent of work and restoration, I certainly don't have a problem with the small addition of the patio, the 10 by 10 foot as suggested. So, Nick?
Yeah, there is one bed remaining in firmly well inside the 25 foot at this point, right?
A portion of it comes into it. Delia, could you bring that back up for us? I take that back. There is one that is
Oh,
in
yes,
there.
yeah.
The issue is that it is right adjacent to that maple tree. So I wouldn't be changing the grade anywhere in that area. So and again, it's a raised wood bed. I don't know if I can move appropriately, if you can see him behind me there over my shoulder. But it's a raised wood bed of, I'm gonna guess probably 3 by 5, 3 by 6, something of that nature. And several feet high. If we were to move it forward, we could, I guess, move it forward so it was in line with the other ones. That may make more sense. We're just trying to maintain the gate where the gate was to be able to get into the area, and bring in new material and compost and whatnot.
Is there any reason it can't be moved to the right end of the that line of beds?
Where the two are being relocated?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Just put it over there with the other two.
Sure. I can definitely raise that with the homeowners and the seller, but sure.
I had a question. I think Delia, you need to help me with this answer. So a lot of the work that's been done is obviously to put back, what shouldn't have been disturbed in the first place. The extra 10-foot square of patio, Delia, is the additional mitigation, I think the far left area that was originally suggested as mitigation, is that enough to cover that 10 square foot patio in normal circumstances?
So that's a great question, Sarah. And Bruce, maybe you can give us the square footage of what this is, because we didn't discuss that, to be honest. So we're looking at 100 square feet. So is this 1,000?
I don't have, let's see, if this is 25 feet wide right across it. So 25 by 50, we'll call it 25 by 60. 1,500.
Okay, so that should cover
Versus
that,
100.
Sarah.
Great, thank you
Um,
very much. Yeah.
So Bruce, if you can just submit that to us, that just so we have those numbers, just for the alteration, the additional alteration within the 50.
The
Yes, Sarah,
1,500
that's
versus the
So
versus
it needs
the
to be a
100.
10-to-1 ratio of mitigation,
It's 15 to 1 at this point.
correct?
And
Just if you just
Bruce,
send that so that we have that for the file.
Yep.
Bruce, just for the audio, can we say that additional patio is no closer to, it's outside the 25 and no closer than the existing patio to the wetlands?
Yeah, as you can see, right at the edge of the patio to remain, the 25-foot line just barely sneaks in there.
Yeah.
But it was discussed at the first hearing that the alignment of the house and the deck above was a good line to draw for the patio. And a quote unquote plus or minus a little. I'm trying to hold a 12-foot dimension from the rear of the garage back, which is in line with the deck in the house. And, I think it's going to be just a little bit shorter than that or a little bit larger than that, depending upon where the stones are.
Yeah.
in the patio that they go across, but yes.
I was simply trying to get it on the audible record if somebody listens to the meeting that it's no closer
That
than,
is correct. It is
what
no
was
closer
there.
than, no closer than the
that's all I was trying to do.
existing deck or the existing house.
Correct.
Thank you, Craig. Any other comments from the commissioners on the proposal? All right. Any comments from the public regarding this proposal? All right, hearing none. I believe we have a motion this evening for this, an order of conditions.
Yes, correct. We do.
Yep, yeah, if someone can open that up and kick that off, that would be great.
Here I am. Am I muted or am I okay?
You're good.
Okay, here we go. I'll make a motion. I make a motion to close the hearing and issue an order of conditions for 309 Lindsay Pond Road, DEP file number 1371573 with findings A, B, and C. Standard conditions 1 through 19 and special conditions 21 through scroll.
Go,
You got us.
it's standard conditions 1 through 20.
59. Did I choose the 1 to 19?
Pending the receipt of revised.
Oh, it is.
plans
It's
by-
standard between, 1 through 20. Thank you. Thank you much.
So 1 through 20, Greg, and
1 through 20 and then through 54, 21 through
59.
59.
Deal, you want to tag on pending receipt of?
Pending receipt of revised plans by Friday morning.
Pending receipt of revised plans by Friday at 10 a.m.
Yes, Friday morning. Yes, thank you.
Thank
Friday
you,
at
Greg.
10.
I'll second.
Thank you, Gary. We'll take the vote. Greg,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
and I am an I as well. Thank
I'd
you
like
very
to-
much, Bruce.
I'd like to thank the commission for their assistance on this. It was, I know, painful for the folks involved, and I'm glad we were able to come up with a resolution. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your quick work. Thank you.
I know.
All right, next application, 23 Revolutionary Road, RDA file number 21-21.
Oh, that's pretty clever.
Yeah, isn't it? All right, who'll be speaking on behalf of the application?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Paul.
Hi, my name is Paul Kirchner from Stamsky and McNary. I'm here representing the applicant on this project at 23 Revolutionary Road. I do apologize if I cut out at any point, just because I moved apartments and the Wi-Fi hasn't been set up yet, so I'm on a hotspot, so hopefully it's okay. But the proposed project is for the extension of an existing retaining wall and some regrading, as well as some tree removal to allow for that construction. Currently, there is a retaining wall that sort of wraps around the existing house. You can see how it curves down to the left there, on Adelia's cursor, and we're proposing extending that. The proposed wall is a maximum of 4 feet high. We've noted that on the plan and have also provided a note specifying that they must keep it below 4 feet or else they need a building permit. Currently, there's invasive species in the area. I am certainly no invasives expert, but Vinca minor, I'm sure Delia knows much more about that, is present in the area. So we are proposing to remove that via hand pulling as requested by Natural Resources staff. In order to mitigate the impacts of the proposed work, we are specifying the planting of 8 high bush blueberry plants. They're represented on this plan as circles with VC in the middle. 3 trees, as I can see it, within the buffer zone are proposed to be removed. So we did receive some feedback from Colleen and Delia on this project. So we have made some changes to this plan. We have shown a construction access route. As you can see, the topography is quite steep here. So making sure we have a safe route to the area is critical. Additionally, we've provided some information in at least our revision letters specifying how machines will operate. So in terms of tree removal, cranes will have to be situated up on the driveway. Equipment will primarily be confined to the driveway and the rear of the house. However, if we need to get larger machinery down to the area in order to excavate for the construction of the wall or build the wall itself or backfill the wall, only a bobcat or mini excavators will be utilized. We will not use anything larger than that, just in order to be sensitive to these steep slopes. I believe I've covered everything that I want to, so at this point, I will answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I guess I just had a question in regard to, rebuilding that retaining wall with larger stones. Do you think mini excavators and bobcats are going to be able to handle that? Just moving larger stone, if you will. And I guess you can, I guess staff will meet with you and you can go over the means and methods in the field. But just a concern about, it seems like there's some fairly large stones down there that you want to build up the wall with.
Yeah, I mean, mini excavators are, they're pretty strong. In my experience in the field, usually they are generally only having a hard time just because of angles. But as long as you have a thumb on the bucket, it's pretty good at picking up larger stones, particularly if the operator is experienced. So I'm confident that they'll be able to get the work done with smaller machines.
Thanks, Paul. Any other comments from the commissioners? You're on mute, Greg.
Given the steepness, how have you picked out the route that you intend on having these vehicles go up and down? And I guess you'll have to work with staff to heal those issues back in should you create some erosion issue. Yes? Paul?
Yeah, so naturally the first thing we'll do is install the siltation barrier. And then after that point, when equipment needs to get down into this area, vehicles will go through the driveway around the back of the house. And unfortunately, I don't have control of the screen, but really they'll have to swing back. This must be oriented due north, it looks like, or more or less. So they'll have to, after they come around the back of the house, head south somewhat in order to get around that existing retaining wall. And then it is still quite steep, but it is a little bit flatter in that area where I think it's 20.
Well, you have to work that out with staff anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest site to work on.
What is the closest point? What is the closest point that wall will be to the wetlands? Just for the record. I mean, we're out there, what, 80, 90 feet?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a dimension, but it
Once again, for the audio, so people understand that if we permit this, which seems like.
Here's the 50.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So,
And here's the 100.
We're looking at something that's nearly out of the 100.
yeah, it's about 85 to 90 feet.
Yeah, that's all.
Any other comments from any of the commissioners? All right. Any comments from the public?
I just had one comment, Ed.
Yes, Dana.
So, Paul, just to be clear, so the retaining wall is what the 4-foot building code requirement is what is retaining. So it's not what is exposed, but it's what's retaining. So just, you know, if there's a building permit that's required, we'll include that as a condition on the RDA. So if it's, you know, whatever from the footing up is what would be considered needing a building permit if it's 4 feet or greater.
Okay, I follow you. Yeah, I understand. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Okay.
All right. I believe we have a motion for the
I make a
project.
motion to issue a negative determination number 3 with the following conditions. I guess I should say this, let's see, the applicant shall, should it be necessary, get a building permit prior to pre-construction meeting. Number 2, a pre-construction site visit shall be held with DNR staff and the contractor to review the erosion controls and limit of work. 3, the stockpiling shall occur outside the 50-foot buffer zone. And 4, after the project has been completed, the applicant shall submit a letter to the NRC stating that all work had been conducted in accordance with all the conditions of this determination of applicability. Any changes from the RDA shall be described.
Second,
Thank you, Nick. And the vote. Greg?
Aye.
Nick? Nick?
aye,
Thank you. Sarah?
Aye.
aye. Yeah,
Gary?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Before we get on with the next project, I just wanted to announce that I am also working with VHB on a project that our company's involved in Lexington. I don't think it presents a conflict. They're assisting us on wetlands delineation and some site work over there, but I just wanted to let the commission know, and if anyone feels the conflict, I'm happy to stand down. All right, with that, we'll continue. So this is 777 Virginia Road, NOI file number 137-1574. Who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant this evening?
This is Justin Moscow with VHB.
Evening, Justin.
Meeting. I believe I can share my screen. I believe I have permission,
Yes,
if you don't mind.
you can.
Let's just make sure I choose the right one here. How's that? Can you see a locus map?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for having us on your agenda tonight. This is an application under Ross Rectrix, who is a tenant of Massports at Hanscom Field. With me tonight is Ashley Watts from Ross, as well as Gene Crouch from our office at VHB to support wetlands. Stuart Dalzell from Massport is on as well. And then again, I'm Justin Mosca. I'm the civil engineer with the project and project manager. So just wanted to start with a quick orientation so people can see where we are. This is just a USGS of the airport itself. Not extremely thick, but you should be able to see this red box. That's sort of on the west, due west of the side of the airport. That's our lease parcel. So everything will be within Massport land on the airport, but it's a lease parcel that Ross has from Massport. I'm gonna skip ahead here to the aerial. Again, just giving a sort of a visual of what's out there today. This is that same lease parcel line that's that we plan to build on. It's currently a developed area, part of the airport today. It's good amount of impervious, as you can see here, and then a large lawn section as well. That's just west of that. These are existing T hangars today. They're technically 1 story, but if you look at them, they're going to look like 2 story just because they're aircraft hangars. But essentially, it's individual storage. Those are broken up into multiple tenants with the doors that you can show up to your own plane, take them out. And it's almost like a garage, essentially, a rentable garage. Those will be coming down as part of this project. I'll show you on the next plan. Those will be coming down and we'll put in our project in, and then those Massport will be relocating those T hangars elsewhere on the airport under a separate project. The and Gene again is on to talk wetlands, but just to point it out, this in sort of the southwest corner here is an existing detention pond. That's the jurisdictional area for this project. So it's just outside the lease limit. It falls within Massport property, but it's outside the lease limits that we have. So you see Virginia Road coming through here. Our access will be off Virginia Road, which you'll see on the next plan as well. So this is the existing conditions plan for the site. Again, it just kind of clips the edge of the plan, but there's that, there's Virginia Road here. And the, oh, sorry, I should say this is tipped now. North is off to your left. So just to help orient everybody. Virginia Road's down in the lower right on this plan. The existing entrance to those T hangars comes in off Virginia Road, which you'll again see in the next plan, but we're planning to maintain that connection location. The detention pond itself, again, it's overgrown. There's no, at least not that we know of any valid order of condition. It clearly predates 1996 with the stormwater regs, so it's jurisdictional with the wetland vegetation that's in there. That's shown in green, and then we have the 100-foot buffer zone that comes around. You can see that in the highlight. One of the things I want to just point out on this plan is that you'll see the drainage coming out of the detention pond. That actually, this drainage is not going into the detention pond. The Massport drainage actually goes out of the detention pond and flows into the airfield. So this pipe that you're seeing, assuming you can see my my cursor here, that pipe's actually coming out of the detention pond. So our work is downstream of the pond itself. Looking at an overall plan of what we're planning to do this, well, I guess I just used a bunch of pinks, thought it was red, but the what's shown in red here is those T hangars that we were seeing in the aerial. Those are the ones that are coming out. Those will get replaced with ramp space, which is just paved aircraft parking, essentially, is the terminology, is the ramp. We'll be putting in 3 replacement hangars that'll be owned and operated by Ross. Those are 3 individual 20,000 square foot hangars, and each one of them is going to have an office component to it. If anyone's familiar with the Hangar 24 site, almost next door, it's like another property, another lease parcel over south on Virginia Road. It's very similar where there's a hangar and then there's leasable office space next to it for anybody that has rented space in the hangar for their aircraft. And then there's a GSE garage. It's ground surface equipment. So it's not a maintenance garage. It's just for storing all the tugs and other equipment that they use to service the aircraft. So again, looking at what we're proposing here, you can see the 100-foot buffer zone. It's just catching those hangars and offices. And then really it's the ancillary parking and walkways that'll go in along the, in support of the hangars. That'll be in the 100-foot buffer zone. Gene, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about wetlands before we get into the site design components?
Sure. For the record, my name is Gene Crouch, Senior Environmental Science.
Gene, I think you might be cutting out.
The only wetland. Can you guys?
You're coming in and out, Gene. Would you
Gene,
like
if
to
you
call in?
Yeah, Gene, if you want to try calling in maybe on your cell, I can keep going on the design if you can get back in on your cell. Gene did tell me he was having some technical difficulties, right? We're actually having a calamity of technical difficulties because Stuart Delzell was also losing power earlier at his house. So we're trying to juggle it. Yeah, it's all about timing, right?
Yeah.
So let me keep going with just showing you the design then, and hopefully by that time Gene can jump on in his cell and talk about the resource area itself. So again, this is just sort of more of zoomed in area of the project as it relates to the resource area. We went over the hangars in the office, and then again, this is all parking and support drive aisles. As you come in, we don't want a dead end for fire access, and there's a turn circle to get back out. For anybody that's familiar with this area in Virginia Road, and you'll see it on the next plan, but it kind of this entrance slopes down into the site towards the airfield. So you don't see a whole lot of what's going back, or at least it's not obvious it doesn't stand out what's happening back here, because there's actually a couple gates that are here today. There's airport security gates where one goes up, drive in, it goes down, and then you proceed in. It'll be a little different in the future where the gates will actually, what we call airside and landside, is either side of the secure perimeter of the airport. The existing fence, this is where we're tying in here, and the airside limit actually kind of looks something like this, and I'll actually, let me thicken this up a little bit so you can see it. But there will be a gate at the end of this pavement that'll be a slide gate now moving down into that area. So vehicles that are accessing the airside portion of the site will have to wait, and there'll be security, card in, cameras, all that. And then similarly, there'll be another one on the other side of the north sides of the buildings, because at any given time, there could be an aircraft parked somewhere out here. So you don't necessarily have that connection if your aircraft happen to be over here and you're driving and you need to be able to have a second gate. So that's the reason for having two gates instead of one. And then if I just finish that off for everybody's edification, the second gate was here. And then that'll tie into the existing fence again there. So that's that there is sort of your landside, airside delineation. Once you're in the offices, similarly, there's security before you can get in the hangars. So because those are airside. Layout wise, fairly simplistic. This are, again, drive aisles, parking, ADA accessibility, or accessible parking, I should say, with curb ramps, walkways. It's sort of a no frills area. This is for people that have rented space in the hangars or at least office space. It's not a generally public area. Ross does have commercial aspect of charter planes, but that all happens through the Hangar 24 parcel, which again was further south on Virginia Road. Gene, are you back in yet? Should I keep going?
He is here. I
Yes.
believe he's here.
You might be muted, Gene.
It's either
No luck.
star 9 or star 6.
Star 6,
Gene.
yeah. To unmute yourself, Gene, star 6.
Can you hear me now?
We
Yes.
can.
Okay, good. I feel like a commercial. I apologize for my internet connection. It seems to be a problem here.
No worries.
Yeah, so as I was saying, for the record, my name is Gene Crouch. I'm a senior environmental scientist with Vanessa and Breslin. And as Justin mentioned, the wetland area is an old detention basin. It's very overgrown. Basically, it's a wooded area. It's got some areas of emergent, but for the most part, it's pretty much a forested community. The water comes in off of from the adjacent industrial or office park through a channel, comes in from, I guess, the south of the picture you see here. And then it, as Justin mentioned, it actually leaves the basin through a pipe into the airfield drainage system. And as Justin mentioned, this is a really old detention basin, well before 1996, as far as we can tell, and therefore it wouldn't be considered constructed in accordance with the stormwater handbook, and therefore it isn't, I guess, protected under the regulations the way they are now as a non-jurisdictional area. So we've shown it as a wetland area and BVW, and with a buffer zone, which is the dark green line or the green line that runs around it. That's at 100 feet. As Justin mentioned, he went through the work components. The blue area to the right of the detention basin is a portion of pavement that's going to come out within the river, within the buffer zone area, and within the buffer zone. The access road coming in is going to be narrowed up, and essentially the right-hand side of the road will be held, and the left side will be moved over as needed. There was an area that we identified as a potential ILSF, a little bit to the left, and over in that area there, off-site, or at least off behind the, fence line. It's actually on Massport's property. We looked at that and determined that it does not have the proper or sufficient capacity to actually be regulated as an ILSF. Besides that, that area is outside of the limit of any work that's going on, and it wouldn't have a buffer zone anyway. So it's kind of a moot issue anyway, but we did look at it and make sure that it wasn't considered an ILSF. So the only resource area we have on site within the limits of this project is this one former detention basin. And I think that's about it for the wetlands on the site.
Let me move on just to show sort of our proposed erosion controls and the sort of the stormwater infrastructure.
Oh,
so you can
yes,
see again
okay,
how that ties
right.
in. And
Right,
then we'll,
so-
oh, you want to keep going? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So the yellow area here, dashed line, that represents the erosion controls around the project site during the construction. It's going to be a compost tube and silt fence combination. So it's at the limit of work, and will contain anything that within the work area. The drainage system that's will be installed is going to be pretty much new. Portions of it are being relocated where the existing system currently falls under the building. That's going to be rerouted around the building, so it'll be out in the new paved areas. There will be a new underground detention system. That's the dark gray rectangle behind the, right in there. That will be an underground detention basin. So water will come in. That's really designed to handle the roof runoff. So it will be clean water that goes in there. That will actually come out and then tie into the drainage system through an outlet control structure, which will meter the water coming out of there. There is also proposed a water quality unit in the back right there. That will treat water from the back pavement area before that is then tied into the rest of the drainage system as it goes into the Hanscom field. So it'll have a whole new drainage system, new deep sump catch basins throughout the new paved areas, and then erosion controls around it. That's pretty much it.
Yep, and I think just an item of note is that this is the work that's proposed here for the proposed curb and edge of drive lane is actually at a fairly flat area in the existing condition where this there's existing drainage out here that's going towards the airfield, and then this is right about where the break is for where stuff is going into the existing detention pond. So it is that back a curb is really the limit of what's going to continue heading to the detention pond. So it'll just be pervious area heading that way. It's about the same size in contributing area, and it'll continue to be pervious. All the impervious area is going to be collected and treated, as Gene mentioned. And I think that's probably the overview of the project itself. So we're happy to field questions as you may have them.
Thank you, Justin and Gene. I guess just big picture here, just for the moment, the new hangars look obviously they are a lot larger than the existing hangars. Is it just the evolution of private planes? They're going to house larger private planes here just to accommodate those?
Yeah, it's consistent with, again, with Ross's operations at what's actually, sure it says too, what's actually 777 Virginia Road is hangar 24, is that one to the south. This one doesn't have an address, so it might. So we filed under the under Ross's address, but I'm not sure if this gets its own address. It's technically just part of Hanscom Field. But yeah, so the existing T hangars are individual. I guess everything's a private plane, right? But they're smaller planes as like single prop type planes that you would have more of a recreational or personal use. And then the planes that Ross deals with typically are more your like business jet type of aircraft. So you could have somebody that came in and decided to rent the entire hangar if they're a larger entity, or that hangar might be split up into smaller aircraft. They're flexible depending on their tenant space and who's renting that area.
Okay.
And if I could actually just expand that a little bit, just because you reminded me of something I did want to say, because the depth of those hangars, you can kind of tell, again, I was drawing a fake airplane here, but if somebody did have a larger aircraft in here, the reason these are positioned as far back as they are is because they also need room out in front of the hangar to be able to stage the planes when they're getting ready for use. And there's actually this is the Massport perimeter road that runs along the airport here. So we tried to tuck it as close to the taxiway as we could, but there's an object-free area, a building restriction line, and then the perimeter road that all work into this. That's all part of the airport layout plan.
Okay, that answered one of my questions. Thanks.
Yeah, that clarifies something for me, because under the old hangars that are here, the smaller ones, when they pulled out of their stall, if you will, they'd be right on the taxiway.
Yeah,
Correct?
Interestingly, the airport perimeter road today just kind of disappears into that sea of pavement. You can actually see it over here. It comes onto to essentially what's the ramp space in front of those T hangars, and then just, I think vehicles continue across there, the Massport vehicles, but in theory, there could be a plane parked there, and then the vehicles have to go out and around them onto the taxiway, which they're not supposed to have to do. So this actually brings that more into standard compliance with airport layout.
Okay, because I guess one of the things that I don't see around the so-called wetlands in the back is the standard 25, 50, I see the 100 as outlined in the green, but just curious why that isn't, better delineated. And obviously, I don't believe from the wetlands bit, flagging to the pavement. I think on another plan that was more like 30 feet plus or minus, or towards the
Yeah,
middle
I
of
can throw a
plan.
couple of dimensions on here that'll make it easier to see too. So
Yeah.
so you can see how far.
Won't we need to clearly understand that to understand how much mitigation we need?
Yep. So so to answer that, I guess let me throw these on here first. So there's an existing retaining wall. It's about 18 feet off. Again, this is stuff that we want to remove, and we'll be pulling that to about. Oh, sorry, those are over each other. But we're pulling that to about 30 feet. Is it going to let me pick it?
And we do
There it
understand
is.
that roadway is an
Yep.
existing condition.
Yep.
It's more towards the back of the new hangars and how that offsets from the pavement.
Yep. Oh, this is not cooperating. Come on. So that's about 40 feet there. If I can delete that one. And then I will get to and answer your question as soon as
Sure.
as soon as I throw these out there, sorry. And that's about 45 feet here. So this is filed, and Gene and Stuart can probably elaborate on this a little more, but this is filed under the state regulations, not under the local bylaw. Massport has what's referred to as sovereignty over local municipal codes. So this is filed directly under DEP criteria. So it's the state standards for buffer zone. So it's, again, that's why the 25 is not on there, or the 50. It's just it's the 100 foot and the wetland itself.
It's 25 is part of the state standard.
Part of the state standard?
No, that's our local bylaw. That 25 is our local bylaw, but
It is only, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But to that point though, if I can just show you where the 25 actually
Sure.
is off this too. So 25 is right about here.
Yeah.
All my dimensions are on top of each other. My apologies.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess-
no, I,
so Justin, can I just suggest that don't worry about dropping these dimensions on the plan right now, but I think in a resubmittal that we just want to see those 25 and 50 foot zones as it's just typical for what comes into the commission.
Yeah, and I think the question also is that, as we know, Massport is exempt from some local bylaws, again, whether it's zoning or whether it's wetlands to a degree. But that's Massport as mission critical sovereign immunity. Here, Ross Retrix is a private entity that's leasing space at the airport for their private business enterprise. And I guess we're wanted to kind of investigate that further in terms of really understanding that does a private entity leasing space for Massport enjoy all the sovereign immunity that Massport is allowed to have? And I
Certainly.
don't think that's answered, by way of the filing to date.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a supplement that should be in that NOI. That was a letter from Massport explaining that and how it aligns. It's in line with
Right, I
their.
think what Ed is saying, Justin, is that applies to Massport, so that supplement
Yes.
from Massport
Right.
Council is
Uh,
applicable to Massport, and that's not really what the question is here. It's how the private hangar, the private entity of Ross Rectrix that rents space to servicing private planes. You're not part of the governmental organization that would enjoy that sovereign immunity. So I think what we're looking for is a little bit more detail on, something specific, how Ross Rectrix would fall under that umbrella of sovereign immunity, and how compliance with the local bylaw is going to interfere with any sovereign immunity that Ross Rectrix may be subject to.
No,
Yeah,
that makes sense, and I think Massport is certainly of the, and I'll let Stuart speak in a second. They're of the opinion that their tenants are in line with falling under their mission.
So I think what we're looking for is just a legal, if
Yeah.
somebody could submit a legal determination that we can have our town council review. I think it's, certainly, it's above my pay grade for sure. And I think having, just some legal conversation around that, I think is what needs to occur. If Ross Rectrix isn't willing to come under compliance of the bylaw, I think we need to just have that looked at from a legal perspective.
Yep. Stuart, are you on? Do you want to say anything to that effect?
Sure, am I unmuted?
You're good, Stuart.
Thank you. Stuart Dalzell, I'm Massport's Deputy Director of Environmental Planning and Permitting. I'm here to support this application, and I would point the commission, there was a July 19th letter to the commission that was submitted by Massport Legal, which was an attempt to address this in advance. I am not a lawyer, nor do I play one in public meetings, but I will sort of try to summarize that in the sense that Massport and our tenants under Massport's Enabling Act, and this is better articulated in that letter, which was an attachment, enjoy that benefit of exemption from local bylaws. And I think it's particularly applicable in situations like this where the tenant, in this case, Ross Rectrix, is doing something that is completely in line with the aviation purpose of this project. So it's essentially, they are operating an aviation component of Hanscom Field. And then one thing that is not in the letter, which I would add in this context, is that at the end of the lease that Ross Rectrix has with Massport, those buildings actually revert back to Massport. So we own the land. We have a long-term lease with Ross Rectrix. They operate under both Massport and FAA requirements. And ultimately, the buildings end up being Massport buildings, and we would continue to operate them as aviation facilities. So as I said, I am no shill of a lawyer here, but hopefully the letter cites the case law and sections of our Enabling Act, and was submitted with the intent of supporting that position.
Yeah, no, we did get that letter from Mr. Tor, read it. I think it was more generic than it was specific to this filing. And again, it's above my pay grade as well, in regard to the legalese of it all. But I think the request is that if that further letter could better define private entities under Massport lease, and we respect that under the long-term lease, it'll eventually revert to Massport. But in the meantime, it's a private entity operating a private enterprise on Massport land. But I think we would like to understand how they are fully exempt as as if this was a Massport project itself. And then,
Understood.
as Delia said, we can have town council look at it, and hopefully that's all in line going forward. But I think we would require some more specific, explanation why a private entity running a private enterprise is fully exempt.
I understand the question. The other thing I will mention, which is more of a general comment, which is understanding that, various towns and even I think the 4 commissions that have jurisdiction over Hanscom, the 4 towns, all have somewhat different bylaws, which makes it challenging on a single facility. That
Sure.
said, where possible, we encourage our tenants to do their best to comply with the regulations. So I think what Justin was politely trying to say before is they have respected that 25-foot buffer that is under the town jurisdiction and Massport. When we first met with them, we explained to them the jurisdiction and things like that, and would always encourage them to comply with local regulations, even though technically Massport believes they are not subject to that. So one way or the other, we try to do the right thing.
No, appreciate that. Thank you, Stuart. And I think to Sarah's earlier comment as well, it would be kind of absolutely necessary to show the 25. We have a 50-foot no build policy as well, as you may know, to show that as well. So that, again, we can get an understanding of the mitigation. And again, based on what Justin's dimensions are, 39 feet, I think the overall dimension to pavement here was 42, 43 to the left of the image. The compliance isn't too far off by way of getting out of the 50-foot no build zone. So if you could continue to urge your tenant to take a further look, that would be, beneficial. Yes, Sarah.
If I may ask, then, in the spirit of doing the right thing, could I just ask about mitigation with respect to the trees that I understand you're taking down as part of this program, this project?
Yeah, certainly. There's a small bank in order to put that turnaround in. There's a small bank of trees within the 100-foot buffer zone that would be here is our limit of work line. So that's there, and I think we have room. There's actually an area you can see the tree line today come down here. So I think there's plenty of room to be able to, behind this fence. This is not a security fence for the airport. This is just a fence around the detention pond. So I think there's room in the backside of that to be able to mitigate and plant trees in this area.
Okay, great. So it'd be great to have that in the plans as well then.
Yeah,
Please.
certainly. I think that would make sense I think we got to pull together something for you to see for planting. This is dawned on me kind of late in the process. When we do our Massport projects, landscaping is usually the last thing to come in. We do what we call a TAA, and that's sort of their internal site plan approval. But there's a site work one, then you do vertical construction, then you usually do landscape last. So it would, yes, we certainly got to put something together for you so you can see what we're proposing for.
And I know Delia will have a list of recommended trees for you.
Yeah, it's certainly a balancing act with aircraft operations, because we want to get the vegetation in there. We know there's resource area that we want to mitigate, but the way I've always been told is no fruit. Fruit brings bugs, bugs bring birds, and birds bring down jet aircraft, is what I was told.
Oh, good point. Okay. Okay.
To that effect, I know we didn't. Oh, go ahead.
One quick question before, Mr. Chairman, would that be okay if I ask one quick question?
Absolutely, Gene, please.
So going back to, I want to be able to clearly articulate this to our legal counsel in the morning when I get back to her, and I would ask her, I have reviewed, I have looked at the local bylaw, and I'm clear about the 25-foot that seems to be in the bylaw. I'm not aware, although I have heard of the sort of 50-foot policy. Is that articulated? I mean, where would somebody find a sort of any description of
I think
that?
it's Stuart, I think it's right in the on the Concord NRC online. You can go
Yeah.
right to there and you'll
Okay,
find the
I'll
50
double
foot
check
no build
that.
policy. And if you don't, please give staff a call and they'll provide you with one.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
on the wetland
Appreciate that.
permitting page.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you, Stuart.
And-
All right. Any
Yeah.
other comments from the commission?
Yeah, I have a,
Go
in
ahead,
terms
Greg.
of this, in terms of this parking and everything, and I asked the question so that we don't get ourselves in a future jam of needing to expand. How did we determine the parking? Who is that for? I assume, is that for just the personnel that deals with the jets? Or is that passengers as well? I mean, how do you know how much parking you needed? How'd you
So
do that?
This is a comment. It's really what can fit in here, but it's a combination operation with the facility at Hangar 24, the one to the south. This parking is going to be for anybody that leases office space here. It's a small office. It's only 12,000 square feet, or is using their jets. So there's not a whole lot of would you say, like, passengers. They're limited to the jets that are there. It's not again a commercial operation. Sorry, I don't know how to word this correctly. When I say
What do you mean
commercial,
it's
it's not
not
a
a
charter.
commer- what do you
No,
mean
it
it's
is.
not a
It is. That's
commercial?
what I'm saying. I misstated that. It's commercial, but it's individual ownership on the planes. It's their charter service is dealt with out of Hangar 24. So
there's
it's
no passengers showing up here to get into the planes. Only the pilots and the people in the office space are
yeah,
coming to the
there can be
location.
passengers, but it's going to be based on what's available for space, because then anything, again, it operates as a joint facility with the other property. So there's space over there as well, where people can park. So if there was additional parking that would be necessary in the future, I think we can see here that it's not going closer to the wetland. If we did anything, it would be on Massport land. It would require an additional lease from Massport, and it would be somewhere.
Our question is, do you need all of the parking that's
Right.
there?
Right.
If you pull out a few of those parking spaces, you could get yourself out of the 50.
Gotcha. No, the goal here is to get as much as they can for leasability. So it's a not sure who the tenant is going to be yet, but when they have tenants in there, the tenants are that will determine how many spaces they actually need. So it's, we know there will be parking, a parking need. The exact amount is.
The underlying issue here is there more impervious space here than there was before the proposed construction?
There
Inside
is.
100.
So inside the 100, it goes
Okay, so
up by.
I think
about
you need to
12,000 square
specify
feet.
exactly how much is being added, how much.
Yeah, it's 11,500.
Okay, where's that specified?
It should be in the NOI.
It is, okay. So there's an additional 11,500 square feet of impervious inside the 100.
Inside the 100 foot, yes.
So we would be expecting to see mitigation comparable to that, right?
Yes,
Is there a
from the
proposal?
50 to the 100 be what, 1 to 1?
11,500?
Yeah, from 50 to 100 at a minimum, and then we've got the 25 and 50 to consider.
So
Well,
yeah,
is-
so we don't have the 50 on there as was noted. The 50
Yeah.
should actually be, I would think it would be a little bit less than what's there today. I'll draw in what's an approximate line in here.
So what, you
Through
know
the
what would
middle.
be really helpful, Justin, and we have this in our submittal checklists that are also on the wetland permitting page, is to provide a chart of existing impervious, proposed impervious, and break it out by, hangar, office, parking, whatever, pavement, and then do it by zone as well, so that the commission sort of clearly can understand what needs to be mitigated for by zone, right? So within the 0 to 25, you're going to have a reduction, which is awesome. 25 to 50, maybe there's a reduction, maybe there's an increase. I mean, hopefully there's a reduction. And then in the outer buffer zone, the 50 to 100, obviously there's going to be an increase. So just to clarify what those numbers are, in the next submittal would be very helpful. Then you can understand what mitigation numerically, the commission is going to be looking for.
Yeah, so in the, even if this Massport sovereignty thing were decided in the applicant's favor, we still need to know that impervious within the 100. So at the very minimum, we need that, right? But if it does
Yeah,
have to go
so
through
it's,
the town's
so
bylaws,
they'll
we
provide
won't-
it hopefully with it. What you usually get is 0 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, and then the total, buffer zone amount. And that information's on the website, Justin, so you can just take a look and see what we're looking for, and call me if you have questions.
Getting back to my question on parking, you've answered it to a great extent, but is it my understanding that there is no intent to increase the pavement beyond what I see in front of me? And if so, will you put a note on the plan that says to that effect?
Yeah, I mean, this would get constructed in accordance with the plans, right? They have to be. If we get an order of conditions for this, then it has to,
Correct.
if there's any additional parking that got proposed, we'd have to come in front of you. So, I mean, we could put a note in the plan, but I don't know if the note would mean much, right? The contractor has to build what's on here.
No,
and what
I
gets
understand
approved.
that, but if you put it on the plan that to attain this permit, you agreed in perpetuity not to increase the
paving or parking
The
area.
impervious
paving or
surface.
parking as suggested here. I'm asking, I'm not saying I require that. I'm asking, would you be willing to do that given that you don't know why you made this much parking other than you made it as large as you possibly could? I just say to myself, I can see somebody coming back and begging that, they're doing really well there, which I would appreciate that and hope they all do. But, we need another 75 parking spaces and here's what we're going to do to get them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And follow up, you've got a treatment, drainage treatment for the pavement. I assume you have a best practice maintenance schedule that you'll have to keep that clean and all that sort of jazz.
Yes, that is in the stormwater report, the
Correct,
operation and maintenance plan.
Correct. And it would be nice at the closest point to put a line saying how far it is from the wetlands, just like you have it in red here. Doesn't have to be in red, of course, but at the closest point, so that anybody in the future or at any time, they don't have to guess, is it 30 feet or 20? It might be actually to your benefit to show that from existing and to propose.
Yep. Can I ask a question of the commission then, as we talk about this, the 50 to 100 foot and 25 to 50 and the impervious numbers? Do you consider alternative pavements if we can get something, if it is over and we're trying to get it back to a 1-to-1 of like pervious pavement? Is that considered, or is it no vehicular areas, or how does that get viewed?
I think between the 25 and 50, right? That's the question.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think, again, with the positioning, it's going to be extremely hard for us to move anything. So I'm wondering if there's alternative ways of reduce, if we do that calc and it is going up by 700 square feet or something along those lines, can we make a section of this parking, like maybe we make the parking bays themselves as pervious parking, as pervious pavement rather.
It has been permitted in the time, things like that have been permitted. I think the suggestion comes from the applicant, not from us to tell you.
Oh, certainly.
But
Yeah.
if you wanted to propose something like that, it might enhance and change your numbers.
Yep, I just want to know
Greg,
your feeling.
I think what
I-
Justin is asking, is, does that mean that is not then considered a structure in the 50?
But I
That
would
does-
think,
that-
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I would,
Which,
we
No.
wouldn't allow paving in the 50 typically.
right.
right.
Okay, and that
Right.
includes, so
Permeable
that
or
includes
otherwise.
permeable.
Yeah.
Okay, that's,
So
yeah,
are there
thank you for
any-
clarifying.
Is there any ability, so I guess I have two questions. One, can the hangars be less deep? Understanding they're larger planes, but are they that much larger? And the answer may be yes. So that's one question. And then the second is, can the offices, these two offices down below the hangars, can those be relocated elsewhere on site so that then you can, you know, push the parking outside? Because it's not just the tree removal in the buffer zone and the, you know, pavement that's close to the wetlands. There's a lot of other tree removal that's occurring that if things were shifted, you know, I would say north, but maybe it's not north, maybe it's west, no, east on the plan.
Just
I have
call
a
it
slightly
up.
different
Call it up.
question, a slightly different question than what Delia raised. I mean, I can understand why the hangars need to be the size the hangars are, but do you really need 117 feet on the other side of the hangar before you get to the jetway? Or could you reduce that by 10 feet to pull all of the parking out of the 50?
Yeah, we do. That was actually, this is less than optimal as it is. This was about as far as we could squeeze it when we tried to push everything north because of the size of a plane that could be in this hangar. Again, the restriction line is really this this larger dash here.
So what size
they-
plane is going in the hangar?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, you said it was, you know, sorry, go
No.
ahead.
No, I was gonna say Ashley Watts is on. I can do the site design, but when we get to the aircraft operations, I'm hoping Ashley might be able to help with that about typical aircraft in the hangar and general sizes. Ashley, are you on?
I am. The aircraft might be anywhere from 60 to 100 feet long, so that the depth is necessary.
And that depth is what, 120?
This is showing 120. So
Okay.
so what I have on there now is probably right about 100 feet, I would think.
And there's no, in the existing hangars today, the small ones, we did talk about that a little bit earlier where, you know, you did say that there's a road that, you know, cuts in front of that typically should be a free road, but obviously that doesn't act today. Is there anything beyond that roadway that can act as a so-called pull-out area? Because it must be acting like that today. So
Out
it's-
here?
Yeah.
So that is actually an FAA restriction. You can actually see it in gray here. It's the object-free area.
Mhm.
That's a requirement that nothing can be in that for a vehicle that's taxiing down. This is taxiway Mike here. Aircraft that's taxiing down there has to have clear operation on that taxiway. So that line that you see here is the absolute restriction for anything that's not a cleared aircraft to be with the aircraft control tower to be operating in that area.
So it probably doesn't operate very inbounds today necessarily with the small aircraft pulling out.
I don't imagine so. I think this is a grandfathered, we'll call it.
Okay, because that was the hope, that you had plenty of, you know, by getting rid of the buildings in front, more pavement up front where you could pull those buildings up towards the top of the page.
Yep.
It might be helpful for anyone else looking at this in the future, et cetera, if you would put a note on the plan at that juncture saying, no, whatever the restriction is by FAA regs or something, so people would understand why you couldn't go in that distance.
Yeah, or to your point,
Yeah,
Greg, limit that area.
Just one thing we do ask people, we see these plans as the story of what's going on here and all the narratives that get filed and everything. Nobody ever sees those. What they always go to is the plan, no matter whether they're construction people. I'm not saying that happens here at Hanscom, but in things that we run into. So we do lots of times just say, put a note on the plan that says that, no, so people understand, okay, 100 foot, there's 100 foot. Oh gosh, you can't go any further that way. Are you with
Yeah,
me?
and that's certainly the way Massport operates with their construction process is weekly work plans, discussions with operations. You have to have listed staff. Everybody has to be, the construction crew has to have their badged personnel. So there has to be at least a certain amount of badged personnel on there so that they can be airside. And when they want to operate more freely, typically a fence will go in along that building restriction line that I've drawn in red here. And that'll set up a temporary landside access for construction. But certainly anything that, once that fence is down and they're starting to do finish operations, they have to have somebody out there that is well versed in aircraft operations in direct control with, or direct contact rather with air control and airport operations to make sure that they're outside of those areas. That's kind of just an internal,
I
operates
wasn't saying,
its own little animal.
I wasn't saying it so much for the operational folks on site, more so from anybody that looks at this plan in the future or anything and is curious as to why you couldn't have moved these buildings 10 feet. I'll use the word up because I don't know where north and south
Yeah,
is.
this is east, I guess. Yeah.
But if you put on a note on that dotted line that you've got there, that said limit of private or whatever this is called on the southern part of that line.
Yeah, private operations or
Limit of private operations,
something to that effect.
or something. Are you with me?
Yeah, I can add something. This is
Yeah,
not
I'm
working.
not asking you to do heavy lifting.
Yeah,
I'm just saying it defines why things, when people look at plans, why it's a great question. Why don't you just move the buildings a few feet up and we're closing this thing up here?
yeah. And
But you can't because of that regulation.
it's an easy enough note to add. Yeah, I think, sorry, we approach this from the aircraft or the airport review angle of how we typically set up airport work plans, but I can see where somebody that's not that familiar with how things operate out there, how that might be helpful.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission? All right. Are there any public comments in regard to the application? Delia, are you seeing any comments?
I am not, but I have a question.
Oh, please.
Do you not mute?
Unmute. There you go.
Yep, sorry about that. You mentioned something about putting this turnaround in here for fire department access to this side? And have you been in communications with the fire department on the application?
So the authority here is Massport Fire, and they have reviewed it. Yeah. So
Okay,
we've
so
actually
there's no
we've run
local
there could be local fire department response, and we've run the Concord truck through there. But the reviewer is the Massport Fire Department.
So in terms of like, turnarounds and the truck size and the radius, and they can.
Yeah,
so
we
that's
got that.
been
We got that
reviewed
from the Concord Fire Department. Their
Okay.
specs on their vehicle. Yeah.
And the fire suppression systems, do they review those?
Massport will review that as well. That's under the state building code.
Okay.
That they'll review it under that. There will be a fire suppression system. It's under design currently. The building.
Okay.
The building design itself is underway.
Go
ahead, Neil. Go ahead.
Sorry, just a question on whether or not this exceeds an acre of disturbance, and if it does it?
Yeah, it will.
Okay.
It'll exceed an acre, and this will be there'll be a NIPD's CGP filed.
Okay.
And Justin, just one last question for me on the turnaround. Just out of curiosity, is it necessary to have that, given that you've got, obviously it'll be used as emergency. But if there is an emergency, do you really need that? Or because given that there's two gates on either side, the fire department can get full access to the back and can, obviously circle back and exit and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Why specifically the turnaround at this location? Because obviously then parking could get relocated up here away from the distances perhaps from the wetlands.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. Anybody with emergency access could go through. Operationally, it'll get a little more difficult, and we have to put our refuse storage somewhere. You'll see the dumpster over here. So similarly, I think if you got a trash truck in here, he operates kind of like a fire truck, where then he would have to back all the way up or get clearance to come out on the ramp. The issue with the ramp is that, again, there could be, something here, and here for planes in the area on operation. So you can't necessarily get around without communicating with the tower and getting back out to, depending on timing of whether something's out there, but you could potentially get stuck here. And there's, again, aircraft park out here. So the ramp isn't really meant to be a vehicular area, or at least a wheeled vehicular area. I guess aircraft or vehicles too. So it's
Yeah.
it's not that we couldn't get around it. It would be extremely difficult from an operational standpoint to not have some way to turn around.
Okay, understood. I guess I just asked the question, obviously, if there's an issue there, I would assume that perhaps, operations are kind of not happening on that taxiway at that moment in time.
Yeah. From an
Yeah,
emergency
that's all.
standpoint,
So
absolutely.
they could,
Yeah.
they could swing around the planes that are parked there and whatnot. But again, probably above my pay grade, but I just asked the question as a potential alternative.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. It's sort of like a fire lane, right? That you can't park in a
Yeah.
fire lane. It's possible that an emergency out here that there was an aircraft on that ramp. They might not be continuing to get it ready for takeoff, but it might be sitting there.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Any comment? Delia, no comments from the public as well?
Nope, I'm not seeing any
Yeah.
hands
neither do
raised.
I. Okay. Justin, assume you're okay continuing to the September 22nd?
Yeah, it sounds like there's enough on our plate that would be warranted. So for my knowledge, so we want a chart of the impervious area in the different zones.
Mhm.
We want to get a landscape proposal together to add a plan to this set. Delia, do you have a plan list, a plant list, excuse me, that you could send, or is
So-
it just typically like more guidance?
Yeah, anything that is on the New England or on the Native Plant Trust website for their native plant list is going to be acceptable. So that includes cultivars as well. It's basically all native species you're going to find on that list.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's the list that we generally direct people to.
Nope, makes sense. We will start there.
Okay.
So it was landscaping, that chart,
Yep.
and then the legal, we'll look into the legal end
Yeah.
just to get support on that.
Yeah, and then of course, as that mitigation comes forward, where you might want to, slot that mitigation on site as well. So,
Yep.
Okay,
Certainly.
thank you, Justin. Oh,
Adding also the lines that Greg mentioned.
That's right. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yep. That's all I have on my list, but I mean, I guess I would just ask again, and maybe I'm just, maybe I missed it, but these two office spaces that are below the hangars, can they be relocated up closer? I know that's not as convenient for them to be, not adjacent to the hangars that they are associated with, but could they be moved somewhere else so that everything else can be tightened up?
I don't know
And
how they
things-
would.
Well, for example, if you bolted on one of those offices like you do on the right side to the left side, couldn't that road extend out and push the garage down a little bit to the left?
So putting this one here.
And
Yeah.
just slide that road, kind of arc it back around, and the garage could, ooch a little bit to the left perhaps.
Yeah, and we would have to modify the lease, which isn't insurmountable. And then that is that wet area that Gene was talking about. Again, it's not jurisdictional, but it is wet. So there would be, there probably need to be some excavation and fill in there. We can consider it. I'm not sure what the implications are on the ownership end with
Okay.
between Ross and Massport, but we can let you know when we're back.
Yeah,
It's just sort of an
Just,
alternatives look at it as to what your alternatives might be. I mean, you could elevate the offices, I assume, and park underneath them.
Right. And I guess the other question is, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but so we have the garage here and just above it where the existing hangar is. Why can't the offices go there? To the
Up
left of
this
the
side?
hangars, so they're not, yeah, is it because it's
This-
in the way of,
These are the hangar doors. These are very large doors
Correct,
that
I
open. to get
understand
the-
that, but-
Yeah,
see the garage?
this garage. Yep.
Why can't the offices go up,
Like in a
on
string
the
along
plan
the.
above
Yeah.
them on the plan?
So
Not
that's-
on top of the garage, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's operational area for the
Okay.
The 10, it's aircraft operational area. It's, if I go back a plan, actually, you'll see it here. This is aircraft parking out here.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
operational space. And then you start getting further away with your accessible parking and
Yeah.
everything else. You don't have anywhere to act,
Understood. Okay.
anything close enough for
But
those.
I mean, maybe
The
even
office
looking at putting the offices above the garage, having office space above the garage.
Yeah, I think these are all prefab buildings. They're all metal sheeted buildings. I mean, I could talk to the architect, but I don't imagine that would be in the standard layout of how these operate. Whether
Just trying to look at
I'm
ways
not
that
sure.
you can push things outside of the 50-foot
Right.
no build zone.
No, I appreciate the brainstorm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just
it
not sure what's
actually-
available.
It is.
Justin, it's just the exercise to go through so that we just do our best to look at alternatives, and
Mhm.
they may, my idea of raising the office might be a really naive and ridiculous. But hey, if we discuss it and say can't do it because of X, Y, and Z, at least we
Right.
looked at it. That's the point of that exercise, and
Yeah.
you just go around and let your mind flow, and lots of times it's right back to the design that you saw originally, but at least you can be justified in saying you did the exercise.
No, that makes sense. And again, I appreciate the brainstorming. I can see the motivation, and we'll evaluate the feasibility.
Awesome.
Thank
And
you.
one more just
Well, thank-
suggested, I think it might be the same, is just to also look at putting those 2 lower offices on top of the offices to the right of the hangars and see if that, it may be the same issue where they're metal sheeting buildings and it doesn't make sense, but that might be another alternative.
Delia, I have a citizen
what-
comment if I could.
Go ahead, Frank.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, dear. I'm just listening to the conversation here, and I'm thinking about that turnaround that you were talking about. And I'm wondering if the folks have evaluated something like a T, where the road would continue straight, but a T would drop off it for the dumpster and such. Is that worth considering?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Did
not?
I lose you?
No. we
No,
heard
you, yep, good idea.
Yep.
Add it to the list of things to think about.
Yeah. Alternatives to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. All right. If we're done with comments and public comment, Justin, good to continue the September 22nd. Just want to confirm that.
Correct.
Okay.
Confirmed.
Thank you very much.
So Justin, just to be clear that if you want to be on the September 22nd agenda, revised plans need to be in by noon next Friday.
By next Friday. All right, I will be in touch if that's not possible. What is the following
October
date?
6th.
October 6th? Yeah.
So we need them 10 days in advance. I think it's 7 business days in advance.
Stuart, did you have a question?
I would just, my takeaway is following up on the legal aspects, and that's somewhat divorced from the wetland aspects. And I'm wondering whether or not we could get that discussion earlier, because you may need to get town council input or something like that. So
Sure.
I'll reach out to our legal tomorrow. And should we reach out to Delia, to you, and try to set up some time?
So what would be great, Stuart, is if you could have your council draft, an opinion that responds to the questions that the commission has raised this evening. And I'm happy to talk through anything if there are questions on the question. And then I will share that with town council. And we'll just sort of do that I don't think we need to meet on it. I think it's more of just an email. There may need to be a discussion, but I think that's maybe a little bit down the road if that has to happen.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Stuart. Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
Great. Thank you very much. Take
Have a good
care.
night.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
All right, moving on to the next hearing, 66 The Valley Road, DEP file number 137-1577 for a notice of intent. Matt, are you here this evening? Oh, yeah.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman, and my client, Mr. Els, is also here in case he has any questions that you have any questions that he wants answered. So essentially, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of what we have here. What we have is a single-family 4-bedroom dwelling on 66 the Valley Road. If you look to the right of the plans, you will see an existing pond with a bordering vegetated wetland that borders the pond. There's an intermittent stream that leads into the existing pond here. You have an existing paved driveway with a turnaround leading to a detached garage. So what we have, if over by flag 10A, just above it, between flags 10A and 11A, there is an existing soil absorption system. It's very old, very outdated. It is slated to be pumped out and filled in place. To replace that, we have a proposed septic system as shown on the plans. There will be a main coming out of the existing single-family dwelling to the proposed septic tank, heading out to the proposed leach field. There is no work proposed within the 50-foot zone at all. We have erosion protection in the form of hay bales or wattles and silt fence, depending on, if you guys want anything specific. And there is one tree that's shown on the plans by the soil absorption system that is slated to come down to accommodate the grading around the field. The total amount of work in the buffer zone for the overdig, for the trenches, and for the grading for the septic system is estimated to be about 1,210 square feet. Project has received a DEP number with no comment last I saw. And that's about it. I'm open to any questions you guys have.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome, sir.
I think staff might have passed this on to you about the various stumps that may be removed from the site, labeling those and kind of, specifying how many. Did you pick that up from staff previously?
No, I don't have anything, no.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it wasn't there, as Delia will probably verify. I'm in the middle of switching email platforms because I've been having a lot of problems with my Microsoft email, so it could have got lost in the shuffle.
Okay.
We can resend that, Matt.
Okay, thank you. If you can send it to the new email address I gave you, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think they're all
We
very
will be sure to
straightforward
do that.
comments. Yeah. Any other comments from the commission? It looks fairly straightforward.
But I think the only thing is Matt, just so you're clear, that there were some, Colleen had noted some trees that had been cut in the vicinity of the septic. I think it was 5 trees, and so to note what just the stumps and that those should be mitigated, those trees should be replaced.
Okay,
In the buffer.
we I will do that. I'll work with my client and get that done.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Matt, are you good to extend to September 22? With the plans being filed as noted?
I can take care of that. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. We'll look forward to seeing you back September 22.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks.
All right. Next hearing, 1024 Main Street, Concord Green Condominiums, RDA file number 21-23. Who's here for the applicant this evening?
That's me, Lynn Tetrault, the property manager at Concord Green.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Well, to sum it up, back in 2018, Concord Green hired Miller Engineering to do a study of the pavement, and that was due to the physical condition of the pavement. After they done that, the results, I believe the first study had 20 boring locations. They found that there was severe alligator cracking, rutting, and base course failure in several areas. So Also too, and Jerry Gendron from Miller Engineering is on this call. And also too is in order to upgrade the stormwater maintenance, or actually plans, I should say. We hired Nick Golan from TFM Moran Engineering to study the results of the borings. As we study the borings, we developed our paving specifications. We developed our stormwater improvement plans, which we have submitted tonight. So the files that you should have right now are the first report, which was the first Miller Engineer boring report dated September 18th. And then the second one was TF Moran's drainage evaluation report. The third one was the additional boring samples that we did on the property. So we did a total of 23. And then the fourth was TF Moran evaluated those additional boring samples. And then we developed the specification and the stormwater maintenance plan. And also too is the drainage, I'm sorry, not drainage evaluations, the stormwater maintenance during construction. So Concord Green, the proposal is purely for repairing the pavement and not expanding the existing footprint. So what we are looking for tonight is permission to start our paving project, or if the commission is looking for us to make any changes to the plans that we have submitted.
Thank you. It seems like obviously, unfortunately, the paving is not holding up. You know,
Yes.
obviously a significant expense, but it seems like a, you know, an appropriate replacement in kind. Like, you know, in terms of that, doesn't seem like the drainage structures are moving. Understand that there's a lot of ledge there, so there's not the ability to upgrade that system. So that's certainly understandable as well, given the cost and expense of doing that and disruption. So it seems like a very straightforward repair project at the end of the day. Anyone from the commission have comments on this?
No.
Okay. Any comments from the public in regard to the proposed repairs to the site and maintenance of the drainage system? All right, well, hearing none, I believe we have
I make a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability, number 3, with the following conditions. 1, a pre-construction site visit shall be held with the DNR staff and the contractor to review the erosion controls and limits of work. 2, silt sacks shall be placed and maintained in all catch basins. And 3, after the project has been completed, the applicant shall submit a letter to the NRC stating that all work has been conducted in accordance with all the conditions of this determination of applicability, and any changes from the RDA shall be described.
Thanks, Greg. Second out there?
A second.
Thank you, Gary. And the vote. Greg?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, good luck with the project.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Next project, 158 Laurel Street, NOI DEP file number 137-1575.
I am here, Mr. Chair.
Hi, Greg.
My name is Greg Roy with Dillison Roy, and I'm representing the applicant this evening, which is Hills Brothers Construction, as you read, for the lot at 158 Laurel Street. Scott Hills is also with me this evening from Hills Brothers. So I thought I'd just give you a quick overview and then happy to take any questions from the commission or any members of the public. So as mentioned, the lot is at 58 Laurel Street. We are proposing to demolish and reconstruct the residential structure on the property. There are 2 wetland resource areas that are in play. The applicant Hills Brothers actually also constructed in similar fashion the property just to the right, which is, I believe, 144 Laurel Street, 140 something. I apologize, but it's the immediate abutter.
It is 144.
Yes, thank you. And so there is a wetland system that is located on the back of that lot that has a buffer zone that impacts 158. So you can see, yeah, Delia is showing you the 100-foot buffer zone there. Areas to the left of that line and up the page are outside of the 100-foot buffer. Areas to the right and down the page are within the 100-foot buffer. There are two lighter dotted lines that also show up. One of them is labeled your 50-foot no build right there. Thank you. And the closer one is the 25-foot no disturb zone. So in the case of the 25-foot no disturb zone, we are actually do not have any portion of that zone on the property. So we are not proposing any work within that zone. There are some portions of the property within the 50-foot zone, both in the back and in the front of the site. So the front resource area is a little different. There's a resource area across Laurel Street on the opposite side of Laurel Street, which actually is on town public school property that we have delineated and shown you similarly to the zones in the back. We have also indicated on the plan where the 25 and 50 and corresponding 100-foot buffer zones are located. So we, as mentioned, we are proposing to demolish the existing house. We're actually also proposing to remove the existing driveway, which is located as you're facing the house from the street. It's located on the right side of the property. And we're proposing to reconstruct the house with a driveway on the left side of the property. And that allows us to pull that portion of impervious area that was within the 50-foot zone just on the, I'm going to call it plan north, at least. I'm not sure that, I don't know my north arrow here, but orientated, but there's a small section of 50-foot zone that right in that area where your cursor is, Delia, just down there, right in there. And there's a section of driveway just to the right of where your cursor is existing that we'll be actually pulling out. So as to make this a little bit more compliant. There's a small section of 50-foot relative to the rounding that the proposed rounding for the new driveway within the 50-foot zone, but we're trying to make that more compliant. The back, so other than that small section of pavement, which would encroach within your 50, we're not proposing any pavement or new structures within your 50-foot. And then relative to the house placement, you can see that the house is fairly substantial in size, and pretty much chews up most of the building envelope on the property. It's not a very large lot, but be that as it may, in the back right corner, you can see a lighter dashed line, which is the limit. Thank you, Delia. Yes, is the limit of the existing house. In that back corner there, we're actually pulling the house further away from the wetland area. Neither the existing or the proposed will be within the 50, but we are actually getting that further away from the resource area in the back portion. So not much else to say other than to tell you that we also have proposed erosion control on the site and we have details relative to that. Our experience in the neighborhood is that there is some groundwater concerns. There is a relatively high groundwater table. We have raised the house as much as we can relative to zoning requirements to try and mitigate that concern. But we do have some dewatering specifications on the plan that we can employ during construction in the event that we need that. We also are proposing a roof infiltration area, so we will be infiltrating the roof runoff in an underground infiltration area in the back of the site, which is sort of the rectangular box that's shown on the back side of the property. I think I will leave it at that and ask if the commission or any members of the public have any questions. I'm happy to answer those questions to the extent that I can.
Thanks, Greg. Delia, can you leave that plan up? I just had a question in regard to the proposed sump. Is you mentioned that the infiltration system is for the roof runoff, and is that also picking up the proposed sump? I assume that's at the basement level.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. We will actually be putting a sump pit in. We have done a soil testing on the property to determine where groundwater is. We believe that the slab will be above it by a foot or two, but we will still have a sump pit in the basement, and that discharge will be tied into that underground infiltration system.
And it looks like it's almost like a horizontal pipe, right? It's fairly flush at the bottom of the slab is 126, and it looks like that detention system back there is sitting around 127, 126, or somewhere in that area.
Correct. It'll elevation wise, correct. It is at a very similar elevation.
Okay.
The sump, of course, will be a little bit deeper than that because it'll go down below the slab, but the bottom of that infiltration system is roughly at the elevation of the slab area. So.
Okay. Any comments from the commission in regard to, I guess the other question was that I just to finish, I guess my final question was just, there's a couple of larger trees at the front, a 20-inch and a 26-inch deciduous being removed.
Yes, that is correct.
And are those, the one that's going to stay in the front yard there, is it just for, is it unhealthy, or is it just a thought of re-landscaping the lot?
Well, the two that are going to be removed, we think we need the one. There's one that's of course right in the middle of the proposed driveway. And then the one on the one to the left of that, we believe that the grading that we need to do there is going to negatively impact that tree, so we would need to remove it. There certainly will be a landscape package with this project. I don't have proposed trees shown on the plan, but if the commission is interested in that, we can certainly do that. Those trees, of course, will be removed in accordance with your, along the well, I'll say in accordance with and along the, pursuant to the regulations of the tree removal bylaw in town.
In the setback.
The ones, and both of those are within the setback.
Yeah.
So, right.
So the thing is, Greg, with the tree preservation bylaw, the way that the planning board has written that is that any tree removals within sites or within setbacks that are within NRC jurisdiction are covered by NRC. So we just need to make sure that under this permit process, those trees are mitigated.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
right.
Show that on the plan revision, that would be appropriate.
We can do that. I'll have to work with the applicant on that, and we can get you that information.
Of course.
Right.
Greg, what is the elevation of the groundwater as you have figured it?
Knew you were going to ask me that. If you bear with me here, I think I can find it.
Can you just submit that to us so we have that?
I can. I can tell you that I believe, if my recollection was correct, sir, I think it was 2 feet below the slab. So I think we're getting a groundwater elevation of around 124.5 in the area. Based on, that's based on really 2 things. That's based on a soil test that was done on this property, but also based on our experience excavating the foundation next door. So we have some some.
Yeah, you have on-site information. So but this sump pump is not designed as if one expects it to be pumping on a regular basis.
Correct.
It's an emergency backup,
Yep.
just
It's
in
an
case you
insurance
get
Correct.
Hurricane Ida or something like that.
Of course, there's always a squeeze play here with these type of lots that have high groundwater and how it relates to building height requirements and zoning. So in this case, we worked with the architect to keep that building height low enough so that we could raise that foundation a few feet to keep it above the groundwater elevation. So we had some flexibility architecturally on this lot to make that happen.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
I
Fred.
understand it's a tricky balance. And so I see, I appreciate that you're moving the driveway so as to keep the impervious out of the 50-foot to the lower right. But it makes perfect sense to me that the 26-inch tree would have to come out if that's where the driveway is going to go. I'm wondering about that 20-inch. You indicated that the tree has to come out because the grading, and I understand, again, you've got a tricky balance here. You're raising the foundation up, so maybe there's going to be a little bit more grading down to that tree. But I wonder if you could just take another look at that and see if there's not a way to sort of grade around and save that 20-inch tree, because that's a pretty significant tree if it could be saved.
Yep. Okay, fair enough. We owe you tree information anyway, so we'll look at that as part of that, as part of that exercise for sure.
Maybe a tree well or something like that.
Yeah, that's what came to mind.
Okay.
This is I should say, most of the plans that we prepare for these lots are 20 scale plans. This plan is a 10 scale plan. So an inch that you're used to seeing and thinking of it as 20 feet away is actually only 10 feet away. So it's a pretty tight, the dimensions are tighter than they would otherwise appear on a 20 scale plan, but we'll certainly look at it.
I hear you.
All right. Any comment from the public regarding this application?
Actually, yes, I'd like to speak if I could. Frank Corbett.
You're muted.
No, go ahead, Frank.
Okay, thank you. So we're at 166 Laurel, which is the next house adjacent to it. And there's another one at 180 Laurel, which is in the process of being demolished as well. So we're kind of the peanut butter, if you will, between the two pieces of bread.
Yeah.
And we're concerned about displacement, if you will, as foundations go in. The two houses that are there now, neither of them have foundations, okay? One's on a crawl space and one's on a slab and crawl space. So when the new foundations go in, it's going to displace water no matter where they're put in terms of the ground level, the water level, excuse me. But I'm happy to hear that this house is planned to be above the existing water table. Of course, on a night like this, when it's raining like crazy, the water table probably changes quite a bit. So I just want to reiterate that the person at 180 has been nice enough to move the foundation above the water table. And we're happy to hear that this builder is going to do something similar. And anything else that can be done to minimize the water that comes toward our basement would be appreciated.
Thank you, Frank.
That's it.
Keeping a large mature tree, if possible.
Okay. Greg, are you good continuing to September 22 for any plan revisions and follow-up?
Yeah, that's fine. Those are pretty minor as far as we're concerned. So we can certainly get something back into you by next Friday. Were there any, I didn't see any staff comments. Was there anything, Delia, that you folks had published or? Oh, not sure she's hearing me.
I think I think there were a handful of small comments. I think we captured most of them tonight, Greg.
Okay.
But if you want to contact staff, I'm sure they'd be happy to pass forward any other comments.
Okay.
Okay.
No, that's it. That's it, Greg.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll see you on the 22nd.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your
Thank
time this evening.
All right, the next matter up, 79 Comerford Road, amended OOC DEP file number 137-1394. And who's with us this evening for this application?
Yeah, Margaret and Alan Dimick, 79 Comerford Road.
Good evening.
Hi. Good evening. So a couple of years ago, we put in a screen porch and the excavation contractor left some problems with drainage, which we're now on our third attempt to try to fix. Please ignore any reference to Stamsky and McNary on this plan. We rejected a impossible proposal that they made, but are using non-permittable for several reasons, but are using their plan, but as a basis for what we're showing. So the problem that we're having is that the grove of spruce trees that provides a visual screen between us and one of the neighbors. And there is water that's being directed at that grove of spruce trees since the time of the excavation, but not before that time. And there seem to be two ways that water is reaching the spruce trees. One I've temporarily blocked, but that's creating a separate problem. So one of them is the equipment that was used to put the pads underneath the porch, compacted a temporary dirt access road, and the excavation contractor never decompacted it. My first landscaper, the cheap guy, didn't even think of decompacting it. Second one, I said, "Can you decompact?" He said, "No, you don't have to do that. We can do everything on the surface." And so eventually asked the members of the division for some help. And I said, "Yeah, it should be decompacted, and you should get an engineer to draw that up for you." So the lines that are actually we have from Stamsky and McNary that we are useful here are two dashed lines, heavy dashed lines within the ground line, which is where the access road was. And that seems to be compacted according to Stamsky and McNary down to about 3 feet. So we've got to disturb 3 feet of soil and then redo the surface. The other source of water that's being detrimental to the spruce trees was a foundation drain. It was a minor revision to the original OOC, was requested by a building inspector who was, I believe, no longer with the building department, was not in fact necessary under building code, but was advisable if one was to change this from a 3-season porch to a 4-season porch.
Which we have not done
Which
and
we've
have
not
no
done,
plans to do.
do not plan to do, but anyway, so the architect sort of arbitrarily decided he would direct the foundation drain to the closest bit of vegetation, which is also the spruce grove. So for that, we would like to change the location of the foundation drain outlet pipe to, where Gilly is pointing now. The location is somewhat approximate with a couple of feet. We know what the elevation pretty much needs to be, but we're not completely sure how far below the ground the actual drain is. So to get the proper level, proper pitch on the pipe, things may move out a foot or in a foot, but it's certainly going to stay within the 50-foot setback. Say outside of the 50-foot setback. After dealing with the area that's got to be decompacted, the landscaper looked at the previous landscaper's work and said, "You really want to get this this grading fixed back up And in fact, it's going to cost us a bit because it's got to take out excess soil that was put in by the previous landscapers. And the third, as far as I could tell, this would not be a require a revision of the OSC at this point, but we have one further thing that we would like to do, and that is that there is a area drain that yes, great, that goes all the way, goes from a cistern at the head out to the stream at the bottom, and we would like to remove that area drain as Delia suggested doing that. And certainly since we got the landscaper in there with equipment, we thought we could do that. We'd rather not work inside the 25-foot zone. So our proposal was to remove the drain from the cistern to the 25-foot zone, which
There to there.
yeah, and then cap the drain at the stream end, blow in wood fiber to completely clog the remains of the drain, then cap it at the uphill end. There was concern as to whether that was sufficient to keep a future tenant of this property from saying, well, there was an area drain there and we should be able to put it back. And so the landscaper did say that if this is not sufficient, he could just pull out with equipment the last 25 feet of the pipe, but then we would have to deal with subsidence, subsidence, and we would also have to do something. We'd also have to have a better proposal for erosion control around the stream end. So I'm not sure. I'd rather go with the proposal that we've got if it's acceptable to staff and to the board. And I don't think there's much other than that. The black line around things is expected is going to be 6-inch straw wattle. It is there's that bump out for working up to the 25-foot boundary, and otherwise it's slightly outside of the original in a couple places because one of the landscapers had just pushed a lot of dirt up to that original straw wattle. And so we want to be able to use mechanized equipment to remove it. If we put the wattle back in exactly the same place, we'd have to remove it by hand. So that's the proposal, and please let me know what you think.
Thank you, Alan. I guess just to start, I guess it's a bit unusual to have the extent of work shown on the plans, if you will, on a sketch basis. Typically the commission would like to see perhaps an engineered drawing that is a little bit more explicit in terms of its grading, in terms of its protocol, and the distances by way of the pipe and so on. So again, I know there's 3 areas of concern that you've outlined, but I appreciate it's an added expense, and it's obviously a very busy time out there, so that adds to the burden.
Yes, it's an added expense, but it's all, which we've already paid Steps Getting Me Dairy $1,700 to put something wrong, but it's finding another engineer has not been something we were able to do after this plan was rejected. So we are trying to do our best with taking the Stamps Getting Me Dairy survey and showing you pretty close to where things are going to be.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and I'll leave it to the broader question to the commission. One question is on the drain you mentioned, where the piping is going to the stream. When was that part of your
this was not part of the original OOC. This was pre-existing, but it came up on a site visit after I asked Delia to check stamp scheme and Gary's work for me. And that had never shown up on a previous survey. And there had been one there a long time ago. And in fact, we had run an electric line from the sauna to a recirculating pump for the pool. And that had cut the old one. And they got the call from the landscaper at the office and said, well, you know, fix it or replace it. And so sometime around 2008, but essentially on our watch, a pipe was replaced. So we bear some responsibility for this.
But the property has several other, and these drains are all basically clogged or broken. The previous owner put several French drains in, or several drains. We don't know what kind, because the property has a ton of water on it.
Mhm.
And so we find them every once in a while and we go, oh, okay. But we've been trying to be really good citizens of this property, working with Delia to deal with these issues. But, you know, and so the thing that's frustrating for me is that we followed the process. We hired Stamsky McNary to do this. And when Alan brought that to Delia, she said, this is not a permittable plan, because where the marks are on here, it's not where they told us to put drains and things. So, you know, I'm also reluctant to just find somebody. Well, we tried to find somebody else too. So that's the other thing.
It took us a while to find Stamsky and McNary, being rejected by a number of other firms as being, I think, too small, and haven't been able to find another engineer since. So this is why we're approaching it, you know, this way.
Okay, understood. Thank you for that, for the background there. Comments from the commission? I guess one of, you know, if there are none, I guess the only comment I would have is that, you know, I think it would make ultimately the most sense to remove that pipe that's running to the stream in its entirety. I think that just is good sound practice, getting it out of the 25. You know, again, you don't know what the future holds, and you know, you know, again, that obviously is one of the more concerning things on the plan.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree, and that seems something like you can do without the engineer. That's something that you.
I agree.
Your contractor, you can get that out, regrade, and you know, put some plants in to restore at least everything in the 25.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah, the landscaper would like to pull the pipe and deal with subsidence rather than try to excavate around the pipe, because he wants to minimize the chances of erosion. So we will, in this case, we'll have to talk with Delia about appropriate erosion control for actually working within that zone. We had anticipated working outside that zone where the 6-inch straw wattle would have been sufficient, but it's probably insufficient going right to the stream bank. So we will ask for some guidance on that.
Yeah, so I mean, when I looked at it, you know, I mean, Baptist Brook right now, even with all the high rains that we've been having, the pipe is sort of high and dry, so you could put erosion controls around the outlet of the pipe and have that be sufficient. You don't need a boom or, you know, turbidity curtain or anything like that.
Okay, yeah,
Alan, just a minute. Are there people hearing Delia?
Yes, Delia, there's something wrong with your microphone.
Yeah, you might want to on and off it a couple of times or something. Just very crackly sounding. That's all.
Yeah.
How far down is that pipe in the 25, would you reckon?
How
You
far
mean depth-wise?
How far down?
It goes
How far
2
down in the
feet.
ground?
It goes.
Oh,
Like
it's
6 inches
underground. It's
Yeah.
about a foot to 18 inches, I believe, underground at that end.
No,
and-
that shouldn't be. If you do that in dry season, that shouldn't be an issue. I can't imagine that. You do that in the morning and seal it in and be fine. I think Ed's suggestion is the way to go.
Okay, so we use something like tamped earth over the pipe when we remove it, and then just maintain some silt barrier.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
It's
Yeah,
still
same
staticky.
effect. little bit odd. It's almost half static, if you will.
Yeah.
But we can
Let me
hear
see
you,
if I can-
Delia, so that's okay. You know, we'll just,
Okay, so I was just gonna say that the pipe is currently high and dry. You could put erosion controls around the outlet of the pipe and be
And
fine.
just, yeah,
Oh, okay.
exactly.
keep it simple.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
shallow
keep it
enough that
simple.
you could dig, keep it simple. It's shallow enough that you could dig it by hand as well. I don't think you want to get equipment into that area. I think you just want to get a couple of guys out there with a couple of shovels.
Okay.
But they'll need a waiver request, Delia, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Alan and Margaret, to do any work in the 25-foot no disturb zone, you want to just fill out a waiver request that I can send it to you. It's on our website that just says how the work that you're conducting in the 25-foot has no alternatives. You're employing best management practices, and there's an overall improvement to the site.
There's no
You
what?
just want to respond. That there is an overall improvement to the site.
Overall improvement, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, if the commission's good with the modified engineering plans we're looking at tonight, again, Alan and Margaret, if you can get some of the notations that we've discussed this evening in terms of the work, and you know, rearrange the siltation barriers, and get some of those notations on the plan. So again, we have, you know, it's a better record of what is going to transpire out there.
Okay. Will do. Yeah, I'd hope to have Jim Boyd here tonight to be able to be my technical expert, but somehow I didn't show up, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
So does this mean it gets continued for?
So
Yeah, I think, you know, right now, if you can get those plans, the waiver in, et cetera, by I guess it's a week from Friday, then you could be on the September 22nd hearing.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Just to be clear, just so we're clear, we're making the determination that this is a minor adjustment, ergo it doesn't need I don't want to get caught in a policy issue where somebody throws this in our face. We're assuming that this is a minor mod and we can do this
It's an
without.
amendment.
It's an amendment.
Yeah, I think if it weren't for the drain, it would be a minor mod, but I think with the drain, it's probably an amendment.
Correct.
Okay.
Very good. We'll look forward to seeing you on the 22nd.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next hearing before 61 Black Duck Road. Notice of intent, DEP file number 137-1578.
Just, I think I mentioned it to you, Ed, in an email. I have to recuse myself from this, given the fact that my family owns a very small piece of land next door, which
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that.
probably prejudices me, at least in some people's eyes.
Okay. And I guess before we commence, oh, yes, Delia.
So Rich Harrington, if you would like to share, you can feel free to do so. I'm going to just run and see if I can find some headphones.
Okay. Cannot.
Hey, Rich?
Yes.
Yeah, just for the record, my understanding of the little bit of the background here is that the applicant and staff have met on a few occasions with, you know, trying to look at the proposed project, you know, in accordance with some of the regs. And as I understand it, you know, some of those haven't been taken up in the current plan. So perhaps you can give us a kind of a brief overview, and we can touch on the high points in terms of trying to get back into better compliance with the regs that we have.
Certainly. Good evening, Richard Harrington from Harrington Associates. Eric and Sally are on the line also. I'm not sure if my screen is being shared or not. What we have is this is an existing dwelling, and is my screen visible?
It is not yet.
Oh.
Did Delia give you the sharing? capability?
She might not have.
Yeah, that could be the issue, given that she's taken a brief respite in terms of looking for a better set of headphones.
I can explain it, and then we can follow up with the pictures. This house was it's a cluster development, and this house basically was constructed with the expansion of a pond that was agricultural before, that was turned into a drainage system for the cul-de-sac from which this house has frontage. The driveway from the cul-de-sac to the house is 0 feet off the edge of the wetlands. That driveway is placed upon a berm that created the pond. And then from the pond, there's a driveway that's shared with the neighbor. The neighbor's on this call also. He submitted attachment A in the application package in support of the project. And then attachment B on page 13 of the application packet online, there's 2 photos showing the front of the house. The front of the house today is a split level, the garage under with 2 doors on the left-hand side with the pavement. The pavement is very narrow for the driveway access to the doors, so it's not possible to remove any pavement to offset the addition in the front of the house. Back in 2008, roughly, the commission received a notice of intent to repair the septic system out back. There was ledge in the back, and there was also silt and stump burial in the front yard. So the system was placed in the back, and a deed restriction was applied upon the land. So the areas available for an addition are limited to the front of the home on the right-hand side where there's no garage doors under, and the side where the existing deck is today. When you go to the building department, the word cluster is stamped all over the folder because the dimensional criteria for today's standards don't apply, because this was granted relief to the dimensional requirements. And also with that, there's a 0-foot setback right now from the lawn to the edge of the wetlands, and the house is in the 50-foot buffer zone. And so what we're proposing is to remove the remaining portion of the retaining wall on the property and replace that with the addition in front of it. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Back when the septic was placed in the backyard, the retaining wall encroached into the town land, so it was basically saw cut at the property boundary. That face of wall looks like a house foundation. It's about 12 feet, 12.9 feet off the edge of the wetlands. It's not possible to follow the same front right side of the house and put an addition on without getting closer to the wetlands, with the way the wet flags number 7 and 6 and 5 are aligned along that side lot line. So what we're basically proposing is to remove the lawn and a stone walkway in the front, expand out the lower level for a study and an additional space for the family, replace the half-level stairs out in front to a full set of stairs, and expand out the upper level for a viewing room for the wetlands. On the right-hand side where there's a deck today, that would become a dining area, so it'd have a full foundation, and storage will be provided beneath it. And then you connect the deck around the back, so you're converting the lawn to deck area, partially within the 50-foot in the back right corner of the house. We'd have siltation controls on the property line, and we'd stake out the property line so that we'd know what is town land and what is private land. And then all the landscape features, which are lawn today, will be, landscape features like a landscape flower bed and something like that, will be outside the 25-foot line. So it's my opinion, when you scroll down, we've prepared a couple of attachments showing the aerials, and you'll see that the activity is within already previously disturbed locations within the buffer zone lines. We submitted the waiver request for the 25-foot and the 50 because we're already in those areas and already pre-disturbed. This is a unique situation because it is a cluster subdivision. It was built with reserving space on each lot for a house, driveway, et cetera, in front yard area. And the area here is basically no closer to the wall that's there today. And it is prepared with an architect involved before I was, invited to join the team. And in my opinion, it's going to maintain the current conditions where they already have rain barrels at each downspout in all corners. Any current downspouts that drain into town land will be cut and put back in the front yard on private property. So what we're doing is basically, there's a long history of things encroaching over this lot line, and this will finally remove things totally from the town land on this right-hand side and allow them to provide a minor addition to the front yard for their addition. And then all disturbed areas will be loam and seeded. We are promoting mitigation with invasive species removal ongoing along both sides of the driveway in the front, and the applicant has provided a very thorough and strong case for the alternatives analysis and things of that nature with option C on page 43 of the project documents that shows the picture of basically, you'll see the retaining wall towards the wetlands, and that option C is basically the addition coming off, holding the foundation that's there today. So it minimizes the disturbance and works within an area that's already existing front landscaping areas. That's basically the overview. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Rich. And I think we all understand 1965 when the subdivision was created, obviously predated a lot of the regulations, and we also know that if this was to come before us today, it would never, garner approval given the regs that are in play today. So we appreciate that it predates a lot of that. But that said, when we look at the plan, if I'm not mistaken, the proposed addition is coming within 25 feet of the wetland.
No, it'll be 28 feet off at the closest point.
Well, I guess I'm seeing a 20, isn't that a 25 foot?
So it's 28 feet, 25 foot min.
Well, I don't know what that
for the
means.
addition.
25 min, if you could. I'm just looking at that specific error where it says 25 foot minimum, but it ought to be specific. Is it 25 feet? Is it 25 and a half feet? Just to understand that.
The closest corner of the proposed addition is basically about 28 feet off. And then all the planter beds will be 25 feet off of the wetlands also.
Okay.
So you can see that the 25-foot buffer zone shown there. It's all existing lawn and retaining wall from the old septic. And then where wet flag 5 is, basically it's a shed under the deck area. So that they showed like a stepping down berming of just transitioning from a flat area beneath the deck to the slope that's coming down the common lot line, which is lawn today. It's just a little bit of any landscape feature will be greater than 25 feet off, and then the addition is 28 feet plus, and the existing deck will hold that 30 foot.
Okay, so as you may know, under the 50-foot policy, respecting that the deck is integral to the main house, the closest point that I can see is the 30 feet plus or minus. And under the 50-foot no build policy, again, we could accept an addition, but it can't decrease that distance from the 30 feet. So what you're proposing today is 28 feet. And in order to comply with the 50-foot no build, that portion of the policy, the addition would have to be no closer than that deck. In other words, 30 feet plus or minus.
Right, hence is why we requested the waiver, and we've stated the criteria which we believe we're unique, and it's a unique circumstance. There's other noted restrictions and ledge and other natures of where it is. There's the economy of this extending off of that common side foundation wall, and even if you add a foot off of that, you're getting closer to the wetlands off the front face. So it's an area where I believe this is something where it does meet that exception, and it's an area where it's been reserved for the residential space for this cluster. The open space adjacent to it and the pond is drainage set up for this design and this drainage. So things have already been built in as pre-mitigation for this project to direct vegetation, impervious area to vegetative cover, which this does.
Well, again, I'm not sure that, again, it may have been that way when it was originally designed as the cluster and building in that additional area, but that wasn't built then. And here we are in, again, 2021, where, there's a policy in place and you're proposing building in 2021. And there's a policy that, has certain stipulates that, in essence, you can't exacerbate that, non-conformance. You have a 30-foot setback from the wetlands to the deck, which is acceptable, and if that's the pre-existing condition. But again, any addition can't diminish that distance any more than the 30 feet. That is the closest point of the primary structure and its pertinent decks.
So the policy also allows you to recognize that this is a situation that's specific and unique. There's no other alternative to add the addition that's less detrimental. And it's a policy, and this is something where they've met with the architect, they've invested time and try to minimize things. You see the extensive analysis that this applicant has provided. They're actively maintaining the pond. They're doing the invasive removals as mitigation more than 10-to-1. They already have rain barrels at each corner. So regardless of whether you're 28 or 30 feet, they have rain barrels to collect things, which is a recommendation. So they're already doing things that normally, that are added as mitigation. So I believe this is, I'd like to hear from the rest of the commission, and I believe it's already disturbed, it's already within the 50, and I've read the same language, but I believe this is a situation that it should be allowed.
Fine, and absolutely, the other commissioners should speak, but one alternative is just to diminish the addition by 2 feet and be in compliance.
And I'm just gonna point out, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
especially now.
much better, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm just going to point out that the policy clearly states that new structures cannot increase their non-conformance. That is very clearly stated in the policy. It talks about construction in the 50-foot no builds being allowed under certain circumstances. This is one where it's being considered, but you may not increase your non-conformance. So where you're at 30 feet, you can go up to 30 feet. That's 20 feet into the 50-foot no build zone. You don't get to go to however far you want to go because that's what addition you want to propose. You need to not go closer than 30 feet.
And I think, and just to add, I think the proposed planters also pose a problem as well. They're at 25 feet. And, we would suggest that wouldn't be allowable under the policy as well.
Well, those would be similar to the 12-foot wall that's there for landscaping wall also.
Well, I'm not sure that's a landscaping wall to begin with, and they are not similar to that. They're new structures, again, within the 50. And again,
you could just plant stuff.
Yeah.
And not do structures associated with it.
Yeah.
Just put in some plantings.
And Rich, to your request, if other commissioners have other perspectives, please speak up.
Yeah, so this isn't, we don't have subjective opinions. There's a clear guidance, as Delia just highlighted, that I know you're trying to do your job to serve your clients, but our job is to ensure that we keep to the guidance. So I don't see any choice here but to do what Ed's proposed and stick within the, was it 30 foot that you already have?
Yeah, I would agree, but I would also say that I think there is more that could be done. I recognize, Rich, you came on after the architect had already done his job, but perhaps you could go back to the architect and say, there's some unique things you can do now with angled walls and things like that. Maybe you can shave off a corner if you don't want to lose 2 feet, in the front of the house. I don't know. I think there are ways you could stick to 30 feet, shifting things a little bit here and there.
I also think that just as a note to Rich, I think the plan also ought to just clarify the deck expansion as well. I'm not sure it's clear that, I think in the narrative, it says that I think you're trying to, turn the corner of the house with the deck and join those two decks, but that should be noted on the plan. Just so it's, again, as Greg has said in other applications, it's a good record of what wants to transpire on site.
Yeah,
There's a label below at the bottom, says proposed addition with an existing deck area, connect to deck, rear deck. So it's kind of like an
So
existing
that's not
label.
clear because it points to a discrete rectangle,
Yeah.
right? And then there's that sort of,
Chamfered corner deck that's being added.
exactly,
Yeah.
right. That doesn't look like it's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's connecting too, right?
The footprint's the same.
Well,
And
so
then
this is grass now, that chamfered,
Yeah.
Right, it's conversion of lawn to deck, which is allowed underneath the Wetlands Protection Act.
not in the 50, it's not.
It's further away from the existing deck. So that's there today.
Okay, but so that needs to be clarified, and then those numbers need to be provided in a chart in terms of what the existing is, what the proposed is, and what the features are per zone.
Yeah, also,
I believe the applicant
we're
does have
clear
that
in
in
the
there.
in the 50-foot policy, we're clear that we expect to be presented with alternatives. And, that was suggested by Gary. And, this is what we want to do.
I
There has to be
disagree.
some-
Look at the alternatives. It's A,
No,
B,
it's up
C,
to you to
D.
present the alternatives, not for us to look at the alternatives.
Um,
No, not to us to invent. alternatives.
So if you go to page 43 of the application package, I can allow the applicant to go through each iteration. What I try to do is basically at 9:45 at night, I was allowing the commission some relief possibly by saying that we had two sides that had septic and ledge. And we looked at those alternatives. Then the other section was a garage under. So the living space to expand the everyday living is in this location.
I see that there are options, but it's not presented in a way that's understandable to me.
Yeah, there is some text description, but it does get, I would say, to Nick's point, it's a little convoluted in terms of reading through and then trying to decipher all the variances within those options.
I can try to simplify the how I present that in terms of the options. I tried to kind of color code in terms of improvements, or good, good, bad in the middle, green, yellow, red, stoplight chart. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah, and we appreciate if there's ledge in the back, and that makes it difficult for foundations and garage on the other side or so on. So that's I think we can get the big picture of it, but again, if this is obviously, if this is where you want to head with the addition, and that makes the most sense for the house and the internal layout of the house and the obviously the site restrictions or the again, I think the 50-foot no build policy is quite clear in terms of its 30 here in this existing condition, 30 feet setback from the wetland. Then the addition that you're proposing could go to the 30 feet. And as Gary offered, there's perhaps some good creative ways where that's a minor modification to your plan versus just slicing it back 2 feet all the way across the front. Again, I don't know all the distances, so nobody can quite speak to how that might be affect the addition as demonstrated tonight.
I also described the alternatives here in prose, but I can take another look and see if I can do it even more clearly.
So I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of value to the different alternatives that
Yeah, I
have been
don't think
proposed
so
at this point. I
Yeah.
think, it's clear where you would like to propose the addition. It's clear that you have the ability to do that. You're going to have to modify that design a little bit. And just to, there are ways that you can do that. So just, go back to the architect and think creatively about how you can accomplish that. And then I would say, Rich, with the, the distances on the plans, we don't usually see plus or minus for distances, especially when it's that close to wetlands. So to put the actual distance, it's in the narrative is 27.5, I think, or 27.7, I don't remember, but that exact distance should be on the plan, because that's what we look at when it gets this close to wetlands. It's not a plus or minus.
Would the commission like to do a site walk?
Excuse me?
Do you believe a site walk is in order? We've had
it
similar
seems like the-
projects where we've
it
had
seems-
25-foot setbacks and with 310 Lexington Road and other similar projects. And this is a cluster where dimensions are waived for zoning, where they're not being considered here for the conservation
But
multiple years later.
But Rich, respectively, that, all those dimensions were waived back in 1965 at the subdivision. Again, we're 56 years later, and there's a new set of rules, if you will, when you bring forth an addition. So I'm not sure how germane that is, and it also appears to me that you've got some good pictures. The aerials are pretty clear. I'm not really sure what a site walk would do, because again, good aerials, good pictures, and again, a relatively straightforward project, but it's obviously got some complications when you want to try to, broach the 50-foot no build policy. That's the sticking point here.
Well, it's unfortunate. I disagree respectively, and I think we'll continue the hearing and let the applicant think about it.
Sure.
But it was designed with a professional on the interior, which typically the commission does not get involved with.
We do not.
So I
I will say
respectfully
that
disagree, and it's pretty unfortunate when they're trying to do this with COVID happening and having office space and things of that nature. So we'll continue if we can, and we'll think about things and come back.
Delia, did you have anything to add?
I would just point out that I would agree it's unfortunate. We have had conversations. I have had conversations with the homeowners for over a year, and relayed the same information repeatedly on the commission's regulations and policies, and it has really fallen on deaf ears, which I'm sorry to see, because it is not a big deal. It's 2 feet. And I think it's, it is a very tight site. It's very constrained. It would not be permitted in its current configuration today. But, there's usually, when we meet with applicants, there's a discussion, there's a little bit of back and forth, and, I just haven't seen that, and that is unfortunate. So I hope we can get to that. We would like to get you to where you would like to be. But, there's got to be a little bit of
Give and take.
meeting the commission on what parameters they're required to uphold under the law.
So I spoke to, I think, one of the prior commission members about this project, and the feedback I got was it would be perhaps good to submit the application just based on our base plan, in order to to have this discussion and get feedback. So I submitting it this way, I don't mean any disrespect to Delia. We just wanted to submit it and figure out what the process is and start working with a professional civil engineer with Rich. So I appreciate the feedback, and my intent here was to submit it in such a way so I understand what the process is, and so I can get your feedback and see where we currently stand. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to continue out, or would you want to consider some additional options and let staff know in the future when you'd like to come before us again?
We can continue to the next meeting. That'll be great.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. I think that's the hearings for the evening. Delia, we have a closing issue.
Yes, this is for Trafton. That was for the screened-in porch on the existing footprint of the existing deck.
All right, do we have a motion? Anyone?
Is that 1576, 137, 1576?
Yes, 1576. Nick.
Yep.
I move that we close and issue an order of conditions for DEP file number 1371576 with finding A, standard conditions 1 through 20 and special conditions 21 through 50.
And a
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. And the vote. Nick?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Greg? And I heard.
Aye, aye.
An aye. And I'm
Gary.
also an aye.
And I'm an aye as well.
Getting tired.
Yeah. Let's keep moving here. And then we got an administrative approval.
Yes, we do. We have just one tonight for 2 benches, and I see Holly Kratzley is on the call, but I think I'll just present this to you very briefly, and if you have questions, Holly is here to answer them. So let me just get my screen up here. Okay. So she's proposing to install 2 benches within the Miriam Close conservation restriction that the NRC holds and that allows this type of activity for passive recreation. These are the photographs of the locations, of those benches. One and second one is here. So relatively flat areas. They are very nicely suited for benches. One is within the 25 and the other is outside the 25, but within the 50. But I think they're, we've allowed these types of activities in the past, and I would support this proposal to install these benches.
Looks good. Any comments?
No.
I go there all the time. I think it would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, always nice to be able to sit down a little bit.
Sounds good.
Great.
Great. And I'm looking for
Holly,
one
is there
more-
anything that you wanted to add?
Uh-oh, she'll take all night.
No,
You
just
have 20 seconds. No, I'm just kidding.
thank you very much, and you may come and enjoy the benches.
Great.
Thank you.
And if these work out, we'll do one more on the other side near the Ripley School. So we didn't know we had so much control over Gowing Swamp, but now that we do, we're exercising.
Woo.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
One more
That's it.
motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Greg.
All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Good job,
guys.
Ed. Good job, Ed.
Yep, good job.
Thank you.